Welcome to the sleepy underworld, a place where romance blooms, magic sparkles, and timeless fairy tales are reimagined for the dreamers of today. From heart-stirring romances to spellbinding adventures, every story is a soothing escape into a realm of love, wonder, and charm. So curl up, press play, and let us carry you away to the land of dreams. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. We'd love to know in what part of the world you are watching and what is your favorite tip for a good night's sleep. Thank you for watching and enjoy the video. The scent of roses filled our bedroom the night I first felt Brendan's presence. Fresh roses, though none bloomed in our garden that bitter November. Their fragrance mingled with his familiar sandalwood cologne, the expensive one I'd given him for our last anniversary, the bottle still half full on his dresser. My heart lurched against my ribs as warmth enveloped me, as tangible as his embraces had always been. Brendan. The name escaped my lips like a prayer, barely disturbing the stillness of the room. The roses grew stronger, and with them came a whisper of wind through the perfectly still air, carrying the ghost of his laughter. 3 weeks had passed since the accident that shattered my world. 21 days of waking up reaching for him, of coffee growing cold because I couldn't bear to drink it alone, of silence where his voice should have been. The police report was crisp and clinical. Head-on collision, drunk driver, instant death. As if the love of my life could be reduced to a few stark sentences on white paper. I'd been folding his clothes. Finally, after weeks of leaving them exactly where he'd dropped them that last morning. His blue cardigan lay across my lap, the one with the wooden buttons I'd sewn back on countless times. He'd worn it the day we met, spilling coffee on himself as he hurried into the art gallery where I worked. I'd helped him clean up, and he'd asked me to dinner right there, coffee still dripping from his sleeve. The warmth intensified, wrapping around me like an embrace. Impossible tears pricked my eyes. I thought I'd cried them all away at the funeral. "I miss you," I whispered into the empty room. "I miss you so much it hurts to breathe." The melody drifted up from downstairs, so faint I almost missed it. Our song, "Can't Help Falling in Love," playing from the grand piano Brendan had insisted on buying for our first anniversary. "Every home needs music," he'd said, those green eyes of his dancing with joy as the movers positioned it in our living room. He'd played it almost every evening, filling our home with everything from classical pieces to pop songs, his long fingers dancing across the keys while I painted in my studio nearby. My feet carried me down the stairs before I could think better of it. The piano sat untouched, gathering dust, yet the music grew stronger with each step. As I reached the bottom, a single key pressed itself, striking a clear, resonant note that hung in the air between worlds. "This isn't happening," I murmured, pressing my palms against my temples. But even as denial formed on my lips, I felt it, the distinctive brush of fingers through my hair, exactly as Brendan used to do when he passed behind me. Quiana. My name, breathed in his voice, soft as a summer breeze and rich with love. I spun around, searching for something, anything. The room remained empty, but the air felt thick with possibility. That was the beginning. The signs multiplied as days passed. Coffee brewed itself every morning at exactly 7, just as Brendan had always said it. The scent of paint and turpentine wafted from my abandoned studio, where my easel stood waiting with a blank canvas. Lights flickered in patterns too precise to be accidental, spelling out "love you" in Morse code, a game we'd played during long-distance phone calls early in our relationship. My sister Geraldine's concern grew with each story I shared. "You need help, Q," she insisted over lunch, worry etching lines around her eyes. "This isn't healthy. Brendan wouldn't want you living in denial." But how could I explain that these moments weren't denial? They were the only thing keeping me whole. That feeling Brendan's presence, however impossible, made breathing possible again. Maeve found me on a rain-soaked evening, when the veil between worlds felt particularly thin. She appeared on my doorstep like something from a fairy tale, her silver hair caught up in an artfully messy bun, wearing a dress that seemed to shift colors in the porch light. "Your husband is quite the romantic," she said by way of greeting, her Irish lilt warm with amusement. "He's been leading me here for days, leaving trails of light like breadcrumbs. May I come in?" I should have closed the door. Instead, I stepped aside. Maeve moved through our home with purpose, pausing at spots where memories hung heaviest. The kitchen where Brendan and I had slow danced at midnight. The window seat where we'd planned our future. The wall where our wedding photos caught the last light of day. "Your love story has created quite a stir on the other side," she explained, settling into Brendan's favorite armchair. "It's rare to find a connection strong enough to pierce the veil. Rarer still to find one that holds after death. You can see him." Hope bloomed painfully in my chest. Her smile held centuries of understanding. "He never left, love. He's here now, standing behind you, his hand on your shoulder. He says to remind you about the fireflies." My breath caught. Our first kiss had been on a summer night, surrounded by their dancing light. We'd joked that they were nature's fairy lights, celebrating with us. Later, he'd proposed in the same spot, fireflies creating a natural constellation around us. "He's caught between worlds," Maeve continued, her expression growing serious. "Your grief, your love. They're anchoring him here. But it's dangerous for a soul to linger too long in this space. The pain." She hesitated. "It could consume him entirely." "What can I do?" I asked, desperate to protect him even now. "Learn to live again," she said simply. "He's trying to show you how." That night, I dreamed of Brendan with startling clarity. We stood in my art studio, morning light streaming through the windows. He looked exactly as I remembered, dark curls falling over his forehead, green eyes bright with the mischief I'd fallen in love with. "You stopped painting," he said, running his fingers over my dusty brushes. "I stopped breathing when you died." His smile held a universe of tenderness. "That's not what I asked you to do." "You didn't ask for anything. You left." The words tasted of grief and anger. "Did I?" He moved closer, and I could feel the familiar electricity of his presence. "Look around, love. Really look." The studio had transformed. My old paintings hung on the walls, but they were different, infused with an otherworldly light that seemed to pulse with life. New canvases leaned against the walls, blank but promising. Everything was clean, organized, ready. "You did this?" I had help. His laugh filled the room like sunshine. "It's amazing what a spirit can accomplish with enough motivation, but you have to do the rest." He reached for me, his touch cool but solid. "I have loved you all of my life, Kiana. Death did not change that." I woke with tears on my cheeks and paint beneath my fingernails. The days that followed took on a dreamlike quality. I began painting again, my work flowing from my brushes with an intensity I'd never known before. Colors seemed more vivid, emotions more acute. Each canvas captured moments between worlds, the space where love transcended death. Brendan's presence grew stronger. Sometimes I caught glimpses of him in mirrors or windows. A flash of his smile, the outline of his shape. The house came alive with signs of his love. Fresh flowers appearing in unexpected places, my favorite songs playing softly in empty rooms, the feeling of his arms around me when I cried. But Maeve's warnings echoed. Each manifestation seemed to cost him more energy. The temperature would plummet, lights would strain and dim, and sometimes I heard him gasp with effort. One night, I found him in our bedroom, his form more solid than I'd ever seen it. He stood by the window, bathed in moonlight, looking almost alive. Our song began to play, soft and clear. "Dance with me?" He held out his hand, and this time, when I took it, his touch felt almost warm. I stepped into his arms without hesitation. He felt real, solid, though his skin held the coolness of autumn air. We swayed together, and for a moment, time ceased to exist. "I have to go," he whispered into my hair. "I know." The words felt like broken glass. "Maeve said you're in pain." "Only when you are." His fingers traced my cheek. "You're starting to live again. I see it in your paintings, in your smile. That's all I ever wanted." "How can I let you go?" I pressed closer, trying to memorize the feeling of him. "You don't have to. I'll always be part of you, Kiana. But you have to let me love you differently now." We danced until dawn, painted the sky in whispered pinks and golds. With the first ray of sunlight, Brendan began to fade. "Promise me something," he said, his voice growing distant. "Promise you'll keep painting our love story." "I promise." I reached for him, but my hands passed through air. "I love you." "Forever," he whispered, and then he was gone. 5 years have passed since that morning. My paintings hang in galleries now, each one a window into the space between love and loss, life and death. People often ask what inspires the ethereal light that seems to glow from within each canvas. I tell them it's about love that transcends boundaries. Tonight, as I work on a new piece in my studio, a familiar warmth fills the room. A single firefly drifts through the air, its light pulsing with impossible brightness. It lands on my easel, illuminating the canvas where I'm painting our last dance. I don't need to see Brendan to know he's here, watching over me, loving me in his new way. Some loves, I've learned, are strong enough to transform rather than end. They become the light that guides us home, the warmth that keeps us going, the magic that turns grief into grace. The firefly rises, dancing through the air like a star come down to earth. Its light reminds me of the truth Brendan taught me. Love doesn't die. It simply learns to speak in whispers, in memories, in the quiet moments between heartbeats. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, it learns to shine like fireflies in the dark, guiding us home to the love that never truly leaves us. The first time I saw him, he was dying. Blood seeped between my fingers as I pressed herbs against the gash in his side, my heart racing as I felt his life force ebbing. The stranger had collapsed at the edge of my garden just as dusk painted the sky in violet hues, his armor dented, and his sword still clutched in his trembling hand. 3 arrows protruded from gaps in his metal plates, and a deep sword wound crossed his ribs. I knew what I had to do, though it might reveal everything I'd fought so hard to hide. The village already whispered about my unusual success rate with difficult cases. One more unexplainable healing might be all it took to transform whispers into accusations. But I couldn't let him die. Something about him called to me, even in his unconscious state. Perhaps the peace in his face despite his grievous wounds, or the way his hand had reached for mine as I knelt beside him. "Hold on," I whispered, placing one hand over his heart. The earth's energy surged through me like liquid moonlight, flowing from the soil beneath my knees, through my body, and into his wounds. Soft green light illuminated his face, strong features, dark hair, and eyes that suddenly flew open to meet mine. Those eyes. In that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. My name is Elizabeth Graythorne, and I am a healer. What the villagers don't know is that my gift comes from something deeper than herb lore and poultices. The magic runs in my blood, as ancient as the forest itself. My grandmother called it the old way, the art of channeling the earth's own healing energy through human hands. The stranger, I would later learn his name was Jeffrey Alden, survived that night, though healing him had drained me more than I'd expected. The multiple wounds and their severity had required more power than I'd ever channeled before. When he finally woke 3 days later in my cottage, the questions I dreaded never came. Instead, he simply watched me with those intense eyes as I changed his bandages, his calloused hand catching mine. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough but warm. "I've never seen healing like yours." I pulled away, busying myself with my herbs. "Rest. You're still weak." "I've rested 3 days, or so you tell me." Jeffrey tried to sit up, wincing. "I think that's enough time to at least learn the name of my savior." Despite my reservations, I found myself smiling. Elizabeth, he repeated, as if tasting the word. "I am Jeffrey Alden, once a knight of the Western Realm. Now," he gestured to his battered armor in the corner, "now just a wanderer, it seems." "What brought you to our woods in such a state?" I asked, unable to contain my curiosity. His expression darkened. "Bandits, but not ordinary ones. They knew who I was, knew I was coming. Someone wanted me dead." That explained the quality of his wounds. Not random battle injuries, but calculated strikes meant to kill. Who would want that? "The list is longer than I'd like," he admitted. "I've made enemies serving various nobles, speaking against corruption when I should have stayed silent. The latest was Lord Edmund Blake. I discovered he was taxing his people into starvation while claiming raiders had stolen the grain. When I gathered evidence and threatened to expose him to the king's justice, he stripped me of my position. I fled, but his men have been hunting me since." The name sent a chill through me. Lord Blake's lands weren't far from our village, just 3 days' ride to the west. His men might still be searching. "You're safe here," I said firmly. "Our village is small, easily overlooked, and few venture into these woods without good reason." Over the next few weeks, as Jeffrey recovered, I discovered that having someone else in my small cottage changed everything. The spaces that had felt comfortable in its solitude now hummed with his presence. He insisted on helping despite his injury, chopping herbs, organizing my shelves, even attempting to cook, with disastrous results that left us both laughing. At night, when the cottage grew quiet save for the crackle of the hearth, we talked. He told me of battles fought and kingdoms served, of disillusionment with lords who cared more for power than people. I spoke of my childhood, learning healing from my grandmother, though I carefully avoided mentioning the magic that had passed down with that knowledge. "Your grandmother," he said one evening. "She must have been remarkable. The villagers speak of her still." I nodded, feeling the familiar ache of loss. She was everything to me after my parents died. She taught me not just about herbs and healing, but about responsibility, about using one's gifts to help others. "She would be proud of you." Jeffrey's hand found mine in the firelight. "I see how the villagers depend on you, even if some of them fear what they don't understand." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "You're different here," he continued. "The villagers, when they come for healing, they respect you, but there's fear in their eyes. They don't see you as I do." My hands stilled in their work of grinding herbs. "And how do you see me?" Jeffrey moved closer, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face. "I see someone who carries light within her. Someone who could have left me to die, but chose to risk everything to save a stranger. Someone whose power comes from compassion, not ambition." "You don't know what you're saying." I stood, my heart pounding. "You don't know what I am." "I know enough." He rose too, and despite my protests, pulled me into his arms. I know that whatever power flows through you, it comes from love, from a desire to heal, to protect. How could that be wrong? The church. The church speaks of many things, he interrupted gently. But I've seen too much of the world to believe that all magic is evil. Your gift heals. It saves lives. That's all I need to know. I wanted to believe him. More than anything, I wanted to trust that someone could know all of me and not turn away. But fear had been my companion for too long. That night, alone in my bed, I heard the whispers of the earth growing stronger. Something was stirring in the ancient woods, something that made the protective runes around my cottage pulse with warning. The magic itself felt different. Darker. Hungry. I knew then that my peaceful life was about to change, one way or another. The next morning, as I walked to the village for supplies, the whispers followed me. Literally this time, Mrs. Eldridge and her daughter, huddled with the baker's wife, falling silent as I passed. Their eyes held more suspicion than usual, and I knew why when I reached the marketplace. Thomas Blackwood, the merchant's son who had once sought my hand in marriage, stood holding court among a group of villagers. His voice carried clearly. Unnatural, that's what it is. Green light in the night, they say. My own cousin saw it. And now she harbors this stranger, this knight, who appeared from nowhere. I hurried home, my basket only half filled. Geoffrey was in the garden when I returned, shirtless as he split wood for the fire. The sight of him, so strong now, so different from the dying man I'd found, made my heart ache. He saw my face and immediately dropped the axe. What's wrong? They know, I whispered. Or they suspect. Thomas Blackwood is stirring up the old fears. Geoffrey's jaw tightened. Let them talk. I won't let them harm you. You don't understand. The magic, it's getting stronger. Something's coming. Something that's making the earth itself restless and using my power. I hesitated. Each time it takes more from me. That night I healed you. I've never been so drained. One day, it might take too much. He stepped closer, taking my hands in his. Then let me help you carry this burden. Let me be your strength when you need it. I can't ask that of you. You're not asking. I'm offering. His hands moved to cut my face. Elizabeth, from the moment I opened my eyes and saw you bathed in that green light, I knew my heart was yours. I've wandered so long, searching for purpose, for home. I've found both in you. The kiss, when it came, felt inevitable as sunrise. His lips were gentle but insistent, and I melted into him, allowing myself to believe, just for a moment, that love could be stronger than fear. That belief was tested sooner than we expected. That very night, the ancient force I'd sensed in the woods made itself known. I woke to the sound of screaming from the village and the sight of sickly purple flames rising above the trees. Geoffrey was already up, pulling on his armor. Stay here, he ordered. No. I grabbed my herb bag and the staff my grandmother had given me, a length of rowan wood carved with protective runes that helped focus healing energy. Whatever this is, it's connected to the old magic. You'll need me. We found the village in chaos. Purple fire crawled along the ground like living things, but they weren't natural flames. They were manifestations of corrupt magic, burning not flesh but life force itself. Already, several villagers lay unconscious, their faces ashen. At the center of it all stood a figure in a black cloak, wielding magic that felt like a twisted reflection of my own. Thomas Blackwood lay at the figure's feet, barely conscious. So, a feminine voice emerged from beneath the hood. Another earthbound healer survives. I've been searching for you, sister. I am not your sister, I said, feeling the earth's power rise within me. What do you want? Want I want what was stolen from us centuries ago, the right to practice our arts openly, to rule instead of heal, to take instead of give. The figure threw back her hood, revealing a face that might once have been beautiful, before bitterness carved its lines. Join me, and we can show these villagers what real power looks like. With a shock, I recognized her from my grandmother's teachings. Lady Blake, I breathed. Edmund Blake's grandmother. You disappeared decades ago. I went seeking true power, she corrected. The old families. They taught us to heal, to serve, to bow and scrape before those who feared our gifts. But I found another way. The earth's power can take as well as give, can destroy as well as create. That's not what magic is for, I said, raising my staff. The runes carved into it glowed with familiar green light. It's a gift, not a weapon. She laughed. Then you'll die with them. Your grandmother was just as foolish. She refused to join me, too, decades ago. I had hoped you might be wiser. The battle that followed would live forever in village legend, though few understood its true nature. As Geoffrey led the villagers to safety and fought off the corrupted shadows Lady Blake summoned, I faced her magic with my own. Green light clashed with purple, healing against destruction, giving against taking. I felt the earth respond to my call, channels of power opening wider than ever before. But she was right about one thing. Using so much magic was killing me. My vision darkened at the edges, my strength failing. Then I felt hands on my shoulders and Geoffrey's voice in my ear. Take what you need. I'm here. Something new flowed through our connection. Not the earth's power, but human strength freely given. Love, trust, and determination poured into me, and I understood suddenly what my grandmother had tried to tell me about the true source of healing magic. It wasn't just about channeling the earth's energy. It was about connecting, about the strength found in bonds between people. The green light blazed brighter than ever, not just from my staff, but from the ground itself. Roots burst from the earth, wrapping around Lady Blake as nature itself rejected her corrupted power. Her screams cut off as the earth reclaimed her, leaving only a scatter of purple embers that quickly faded to ash. I swayed on my feet, and Geoffrey caught me. Through blurring vision, I saw the villagers emerging from their homes, Thomas Blackwood among them. I waited for the fear, the accusations. Instead, Thomas dropped to his knees. You saved us, he said simply. All this time, we feared your power, and you used it to save us. One by one, others joined him. Mrs. Eldridge brought blankets. The baker's wife offered bread. And slowly, I realized that the very thing I'd feared, being seen for what I truly was, had set me free. Later that night, as Geoffrey and I sat in my garden under the stars, he asked, "What now?" I looked at our intertwined hands, still faintly glowing with shared power. Now we heal. The village, ourselves, the land itself. Together. Lady Blake's corruption will take time to cleanse from these woods. Together, he agreed, pulling me closer. My wandering days are done, Elizabeth Graythorne. Where you are is where I belong. What about Lord Blake? His men will still be hunting you. Geoffrey smiled. Let them come. After tonight, I think they'll find this village has unexpected protections. And perhaps it's time the king heard the truth about the Blake family's dealings. I kissed him then, under the light of the moon that had witnessed so much magic. But the greatest magic of all was this: two hearts becoming one, a love that could overcome darkness, and the simple truth that in finding one another, we had both found home. The earth hummed beneath us in approval, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly at peace. My power was no longer a secret to hide, but a gift to share, and in Geoffrey's arms, I finally understood that the greatest healing magic of all was love itself. As we sat there in the quiet of the garden, watching the stars wheel overhead, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. Knight and healer, warrior and witch, two souls bound not by magic or duty, but by choice and love. And in the end, that was the only magic we needed. The villagers called them the Eternal Mountains, the towering peaks that pierced the clouds like ancient spears of ice. From my vantage point in my steam-powered snowmobile, their jagged silhouettes cut against the pewter sky like a crown of crystal thorns. I called them my next great challenge, though the word challenge felt inadequate as I watched storm clouds gather around their peaks, dark and heavy with winter's fury. As my vehicle crawled up the narrow mountain path, the engine's steady purr competed with the howling wind. The instrument panel cast a warm glow of brass and copper light across my gloved hands, the metal surfaces polished to mirror brightness from years of use. Steam hissed through carefully calibrated valves, smelling of oil and metal and adventure. Beyond the reinforced glass windows, snowflakes danced in hypnotic patterns, each unique crystal catching the light before joining its brethren in the deepening drifts. I hadn't come to these remote heights for the legends, though the innkeeper in the last town had filled my ears with tales of the mysterious snow maiden who protected these peaks. I still remembered how her eyes had widened when I mentioned my destination, how her weathered hands had clutched at her shawl as she spoke of a being who walked through blizzards as easily as summer breezes, her presence turning even the deadliest storms into gentle snowfall. "She's saved us all, one way or another," the innkeeper had said, her voice dropping to a whisper heavy with reverence. "But never look directly at her, my boy. Her beauty freezes the heart as surely as the deepest winter." I had smiled politely, more focused on checking my equipment than heeding supernatural warnings. I sought inspiration for my next invention. Perhaps something to help humanity survive in these harsh climates. My workshop back in the city was filled with half-finished projects, each one reaching toward the same goal, bridging the gap between human fragility and nature's raw power. Yet, as the storm intensified and my visibility dropped to mere feet, those dismissed warnings began to echo in my mind. The wind's howl took on an almost musical quality, like a chorus of voices just beyond comprehension. The snow itself seemed to move with purpose, swirling in patterns too precise to be natural. The first sign of real trouble came with a sound like thunder, except thunder had no place in a snowstorm. I looked up through the glass dome of my vehicle to see a wall of white racing down the mountainside. The avalanche moved faster than any natural phenomenon should, as if driven by an intelligent malice. In the heart of the cascading snow, I could have sworn I saw a figure of darker white, like a shadow cast by winter itself. I gunned the engine, but the snow was already upon me. The world turned white, then black. Metal screamed as my vehicle was tossed like a child's toy. Glass cracked in crystalline spider webs across my vision. The last thing I remembered was a flash of silver-white hair and eyes that glowed like the heart of a glacier, filled with an ancient sorrow that called to something deep within my soul. When I woke, I lay in a cave of ice that sparkled with its own inner light. Layers of color shifted through the frozen walls, deep blues, subtle purples, hints of green, creating an aurora in miniature. My body should have been frozen, but warmth emanated from the very walls around me, as if the ice itself had been transformed into something that defied natural law. And there she stood, the figure from my fading memories, real as the cold air in my lungs, real and more breathtaking than any legend could have prepared me for. Her dress seemed woven from snowflakes, each movement creating cascades of crystalline light that played across the cave walls. Her skin held the pale luminescence of moonlight on fresh snow, translucent enough that I could almost see the gentle pulse of power beneath. Her hair floated around her face as if suspended in water, each strand catching and refracting light like strands of living crystal. But it was her eyes that captured me, blue as the deepest ice, ancient and lonely as winter itself. Within their depths, I saw centuries of solitude, of watching mortal lives flash by like summer flowers, while she remained unchanging as the eternal snows. In that moment, all my scientific certainties crumbled like frost beneath the sun. "You shouldn't have come here, Ren Nakamura," she said, her voice like wind through icicles, musical and sharp and haunting. "These mountains are not safe for dreamers." Frost spiraled across the cave floor where she stepped, creating intricate patterns that reminded me of the blueprints scattered across my workshop desk. I pushed myself up, wincing at my bruised muscles. The air around me sparkled with tiny ice crystals that caught the ethereal light, creating halos of rainbow color. "You know my name? I know all who enter my domain." She moved closer, and the air around her shimmered with frost that smelled of winter roses and pine needles. Her presence brought a chill that somehow felt intimate rather than threatening, like the first breath of winter through an open window. "Just as I know you don't believe in me. The Snow Maiden of legend." I couldn't keep the wonder from my voice. All my scientific certainties melted in her presence, replaced by a deeper kind of knowing. My fingers itched to reach for her, to prove her solidity despite her ethereal appearance. "But you're real. Real enough to save you." Her expression softened slightly, and the temperature in the cave rose a fraction. A strand of her crystalline hair drifted close enough to brush my cheek, leaving a trail of tingling warmth and cold that lingered like a caress. "But you must leave when the storm passes. There are forces stirring in these mountains that even I cannot protect you from." "What forces? What are you protecting these people from?" I took a step toward her, drawn by an impulse I couldn't explain. The air between us grew thick with tension, like the moment before lightning strikes. She turned away, her form becoming translucent at the edges. The scent of winter roses intensified, mixing with an ancient smell of ice and stone. "Some questions are better left in the snow, inventor. For now, rest. Dawn comes soon." Her voice carried notes of longing that belied her warning words. "Dreams are dangerous things in these mountains. They have a way of coming true." Before I could respond, she melted into the air like snow in sunlight, leaving only a lingering trace of her presence. A slight warmth in the usually bitter cold, a faint shimmer in the air, and the haunting sense of something vital left unfinished. When I woke again, I lay in a normal cave, my vehicle somehow intact beside me. Sunlight filtered through a thin sheet of ice across the entrance, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the stone walls. Only a lingering scent of winter roses suggested I hadn't dreamed the whole encounter. I should have listened. Should have descended the mountain and returned to my comfortable workshop in the city, where science made sense and magic was safely confined to children's stories. But her eyes haunted me. Not their supernatural glow, but the profound solitude I'd glimpsed within them. No one should carry such loneliness, not even a spirit of winter. The village of Blythewood welcomed me with surprised warmth that contrasted sharply with the biting mountain air. Smoke rose from stone chimneys in lazy spirals, carrying the scent of pine wood and cooking spices. Children played in the snow-covered streets, their laughter bright as silver bells, while adults went about their work with the unhurried confidence of those long adapted to winter's ways. Few outsiders brave the high passes, the village elder told me over steaming cups of pine needle tea. The liquid glowed amber in carved crystal cups that caught and reflected the firelight. Her wrinkled hands cupped her drink as she studied me with eyes wise as the mountains themselves. "The Snow Maiden guides worthy travelers to us," they say. "Perhaps she sees something in you." I didn't tell her about my encounter in the cave, but my silence seemed answer enough. She nodded as if confirming something to herself and pressed a small crystal into my palm. It felt warm despite its icy appearance, pulsing gently like a tiny heartbeat. "For protection," she said simply, "and perhaps for connection." I set up my workshop in an abandoned barn at the village edge, close to the wild boundaries of the forest where civilization melted into winter's domain. The building's weathered wooden walls held the patina of ages, smooth and silver as frost. I spent the first days reinforcing the structure, adding my own inventions: copper pipes that carried steam heat, brass valves that regulated temperature, delicate instruments that measured the mountain's moods. The villagers watched my work with curious respect, bringing gifts of thick blankets woven with patterns of snowflakes and stars, jars of preserved mountain berries that burst with summer's sweetness, and stories. Always stories, each one adding another layer to my understanding of their mysterious protector. By day, I worked on my inventions, new heating systems that didn't fight against the cold but worked in harmony with it, more efficient snow-clearing devices that moved with winter's natural rhythms. The crystal the elder had given me sat on my workbench, its warm pulse synchronizing with my heartbeat as I worked. By night, I listened to the villagers' tales of their mysterious protector. They spoke of blizzards calmed by her presence, of dying crops saved by her blessed frost, of children rescued from winter's grasp. In their stories, she was both terrible and tender, as changeable as the mountain weather, yet as constant as the eternal snows. Yet none had seen her as I had. None knew she could speak, or that she bore such weight in her immortal heart. None mentioned the profound loneliness I'd glimpsed in her glacier blue eyes. The second time I saw her, I was tracking an unusual energy reading deep in the forest. My instruments had detected something that defied scientific explanation: a cold that burned, a power that made the compass needle spin in impossible directions. The crystal in my pocket pulsed stronger with each step into the wilderness. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Snow fell in perfect silence, each flake drifting with deliberate grace. Ice coated the tree branches in layers that caught the fading light, creating a cathedral of frozen beauty. My breath fogged in the air, carrying the scent of pine and something sweeter: winter roses. She emerged from a curtain of falling snow, more substantial than before. Her presence brought that familiar mix of warmth and cold that I'd started to crave like a fever. Frost patterns spiraled out from her feet, creating trails of ice that matched the racing of my heart. "I warned you to leave." Her voice carried notes of concern that belied her stern words. A snowflake landed on her cheek and didn't melt, adding to her crystalline beauty. I couldn't. The truth fell from my lips like fresh snow, pure and unstoppable. My fingers tightened around the crystal in my pocket, feeling its pulse quicken to match my own. Not without understanding. Understanding brings only pain, Ren. She spoke my name like a half-forgotten lullaby, each syllable carrying centuries of longing. The air between us grew thick with unspoken possibilities. Knowledge is not always a gift. Then let me share the burden of it. I stepped closer, watching the frost patterns shift and swirl around her feet in response to her emotions. You don't have to carry it alone. She studied me for a long moment, her eternal winter meeting my mortal warmth. The snow between us fell slower. Finally, she held out her hand. Frost immediately coated my glove where she touched it, but underneath, I felt a warmth that defied explanation. "Come," she whispered, her voice carrying both invitation and warning. "There is something you should see." She led me deeper into the forest, where the trees grew close and dark. Our footsteps left matching prints in the fresh snow, hers perfect crystals that sparkled with inner light, mine merely mortal impressions beside them. The crystal in my pocket grew warmer with each step, its pulse matching the rhythm of our movement. In a clearing stood an ancient shrine, its stone surfaces carved with scenes that caught and held the eye. Warriors battling a force of pure winter. A maiden stepping between humanity and protection. A sacrifice that echoed through centuries. At its center, a crystal much like mine pulsed with a cold blue light that seemed to reach for the snow maiden like a lover's touch. "Long ago," she said, her voice taking on the cadence of ancient memory. "These mountains faced a force that sought to plunge the world into endless winter. The people here had learned to live in harmony with the cold, but this entity, the Frost King, wanted only destruction. His power turned snow to steel, ice to obsidian, winter itself into a weapon." She touched the shrine's surface, and frost spread from her fingers, highlighting the carvings until they seemed to move. A young priestess discovered that the Frost King's power could be bound by an equal and opposite force, the warmth of human love and sacrifice. She offered herself, using her warmth and humanity as the price for his imprisonment. She became the first snow maiden, forever walking the boundary between human and spirit. "You're her descendant?" I asked, though in my heart I already knew the answer. "I am her." She turned to me, and in her eyes I saw centuries of solitude. Immortality was part of the price. Each winter, I feel more of my humanity slip away as I maintain his bonds. Each summer, I remember less of what it meant to be human. Her hand still rested on the shrine, and I covered it with mine. The cold bit deep, but I welcomed it. There has to be another way. A balance between sacrifice and survival. "Why would you risk yourself for me?" Her voice held wonder and fear in equal measure. Snowflakes swirled between us, carrying the scent of winter roses and possibility. "Because I see you," I said simply. "Not the legend, not the spirit, but you. And no one should face eternity alone." Something shifted in her eyes then, a thaw in glaciers that had stood frozen for centuries. The crystal's pulse quickened, matching the rhythm of our shared breath. "Your warmth calls to me, Wren. Like spring calls to winter, like dawn calls to dusk. But it also endangers you." Her free hand rose to cup my cheek, and frost bloomed across my skin like a caress. The colder I become, the more I hunger for mortal heat. "Then take it." I turned my face into her touch, though every instinct warned against it. The cold burned, but beneath it lay a warmth I'd never known. "Take what you need." "It would destroy you." Fear crept into her voice. Not of me, but for me. "I don't believe that." Another step closer. Frost crawled up my sleeves, but I didn't retreat. The crystal in my pocket blazed with warmth, counterpoint to her winter chill. "You've spent centuries protecting others. Let someone protect you for once." The kiss, when it came, burned with cold fire. Frost spread across my skin, but beneath it, I felt her trembling with long-denied warmth. Her lips were soft as new snow, sweet as ice wine. For a moment, we stood suspended between mortal and immortal, winter and spring, duty and desire. The crystals, both hers and mine, pulsed in harmony, creating a symphony of light and power. Then the shrine's crystal flared with violent light, and she pushed me away. "He feels it," she gasped. "My weakness, my want." Ice spread from her feet, crackling across the clearing with predatory intent. "Run." But I couldn't leave her. Not now. Not ever. "Now, Wren!" she shouted, as a force stronger than life and deadlier than death engulfed her in its frosty fury. Frightened and freezing, I obeyed her command. I ran, far and fast, questioning my decision to leave her, ashamed that I wasn't brave enough to stay. Weeks passed in a chilling blur, a dance of advance and retreat. By day, I worked frantically in my workshop, studying the old stories, combining ancient wisdom with modern science. Steam and ice, copper and crystal, human ingenuity and eternal magic. Surely there was a way to bridge these worlds. By night, she came to me, drawn by my warmth, even as she feared it would destroy us both. We shared moments stolen from winter itself, her cool fingers tracing my inventions with curiosity, my hands teaching her to feel again through layers of protective cloth. Each touch burned with cold, but each burn struck deeper into her frozen heart, awakening feelings she'd thought lost to centuries of ice. "Tell me about the world beyond the mountains," she would ask, as we sat in my workshop, surrounded by the gentle hiss of steam and the ticking of delicate instruments. I described the wonders I'd seen, the machines I'd built, the dreams I still chased. In return, she shared fragments of her human life, memories preserved like flowers in ice, a mother's smile, a sister's laugh, the taste of fresh bread on winter mornings. But as our connection grew stronger, so did the Frost King's attacks. Storms raged with unnatural fury. Avalanches struck without warning. The very air grew sharp with malicious cold that sought to extinguish all warmth. "He feeds on winter's power," she explained one night, as we huddled in my workshop while the wind howled outside. Her hands traced patterns in the frost on my windows, patterns that matched the designs scattered across my workbench. And I am winter-made flesh. The more I feel, the more power I release into the world, the more his prison weakens. Then we'll find another source of power. I showed her my latest invention, a device that could channel thermal energy, converting heat to cold and back again. Brass pipes twisted like frozen vines, copper coils hummed with contained power, and at its heart sat the crystal the elder had given me, pulsing with possibility. If we can't break the cycle, we'll change it. She touched the device, leaving swirls of frost in her wake. "You still think science can solve what magic created? I think love can solve what loneliness created." I caught her hand, ignoring the cold that instantly numbed my fingers. The crystal flared brighter at our touch. "Your predecessor used sacrifice to bind him. But what if the answer isn't in losing humanity, but in sharing it?" Understanding dawned in her winter-bright eyes. A balance. Yes. Not warm defeating cold, or cold consuming warm, but both existing together, strengthening one another. The storm outside intensified, as if the Frost King himself raged against our discovery. The windows rattled, ice crept across the walls. But in that moment, holding her gradually warming hand, I felt nothing but hope. It took us 3 more days to perfect the device. 3 days of endless storms. 3 days of the village huddling in fear while their protector and a foreign inventor gambled with forces beyond mortal understanding. The villagers brought us supplies without question, their trust in her extending to include me, the outsider who dared to love winter itself. When the final night came, we stood before the ancient shrine as the worst blizzard in living memory raged around us. The crystal prison pulsed with blinding light, ice spreading from its base like reaching fingers. Wind-driven snow carved patterns in the air, beautiful and deadly as the Frost King's power grew. "Are you sure about this?" Her voice barely carried over the wind. She looked more human than I'd ever seen her, fear and hope warring in her expression. "Once we begin, there's no turning back. If we fail, we won't." I activated the device, watching the indicators spin to life. Steam met ice in carefully controlled spirals. The crystal in my pocket pulsed in harmony with the shrine's larger one. "Do you trust me?" "More than I've trusted anyone in centuries." She took my hands, and for the first time, her touch didn't burn with cold. The ritual began simply, her power flowing into the crystal, my device channeling it, transforming it from destructive cold to balanced energy. But as the Frost King felt his prison changing, he fought back with all his ancient fury. Ice spears erupted from the ground. The wind turned solid, sharp enough to cut. The very air crystallized, threatening to freeze us where we stood. Through it all, she stood firm, one hand on the crystal, the other gripped in mine. Our hearts beat in time with the pulsing lights, creating a rhythm older than winter itself. "Hold on," I shouted, as the device reached critical levels. Steam and ice met in impossible patterns, neither winning, both transforming. Just a little longer. The cold became unbearable, then transcendent. I felt her power course through me, no longer burning but singing in my blood. My warmth flowed into her, not weakening but growing stronger in the sharing. Science and magic, mortal and spirit, love and duty, all merging into something entirely new. The crystal's light changed from cold blue to warm gold. The Frost King screamed in rage, then wonder, as his prison transformed. No longer a cage of sacrifice, but a lens of balance, focusing and dispersing winter's power in eternal harmony. The storm above calmed, snow falling now in gentle swirls that caught the dawn's first light. When it was over, she stood solid and real in my arms, her skin still cool but no longer deathly cold. "How do you feel?" I asked, brushing snowflakes from her hair, snowflakes that no longer froze instantly at her touch. "Human," she whispered, "but also more, both mortal and spirit, winter and spring." She touched my face, and her fingers left only the faintest trace of frost. "What about you?" I smiled, watching my breath mist in the air. A little cooler, but in a good way. The village celebrated for 3 days when they learned their protector had found both love and balance. The storms still come. Winter will always have its fury. But now they're natural, clean, part of the eternal cycle rather than an ancient being's rage. She has a mortal name now, though I keep it close to my heart. To the village, she's still their snow maiden, blessing their crops with gentle frost and calming winter's worst moods. To me, she's simply my love, cool fingers intertwined with mine as we walk the boundary between worlds. Our home sits at the edge of the village, half workshop and half shrine. The devices we create together combine science and magic in ways neither of us could have imagined alone. Steam and ice dance in eternal balance, just as we do. And on the coldest nights, when we watch the aurora dance above the peaks, I remember that some loves are worth braving the storm for. They say opposites attract, but maybe they do more than that. Maybe they complete one another, creating something entirely new in the space between extremes. In the end, that's where we found our answer, not in conquering the cold or surrendering to it, but in learning to dance with winter itself. And in our dance, we found forever. The lunar veil shimmered above me like a gossamer curtain of starlight, but something darker lurked behind its ethereal beauty. Blood had been spilled on nights like this before. Witch blood, vampire blood, all of it seeping into the earth beneath my feet. I could feel it calling to my magic, ancient violence resonating with the power that coursed through my veins. I hadn't meant to venture this far from the Coven's sanctuary. The Boundary Woods held dangers far worse than vampires, things that slithered through shadow and whispered promises that could drive even the strongest witch mad. But something pulled me forward, each step carrying me deeper into the midnight realm where magic grew wild and untamed. My fingers tingled with excess energy, small sparks of violet light dancing between them. The magic within me responded to the rare alignment above, growing stronger with each passing moment. As a daughter of the enchanted coven, I'd been taught to fear this raw power, to contain it within the strict boundaries of our ancient laws. We all knew the stories of witches who'd let their power run unchecked, how they'd transformed into creatures of pure magic, their humanity burning away like morning mist. I reached a clearing where moonlight pooled like liquid silver on the grass. The rational part of my mind urged me to turn back, to return to the safety of the coven's walls. Instead, I lifted my face to the stars and let my power flow freely for the first time in my life. Purple light erupted from my palms, weaving through the air in intricate patterns that matched the rhythm of my heartbeat. The magic sang through my blood, sweet and seductive, promising things I'd never dared to dream. "Beautiful," a voice murmured from the shadows, rich as dark honey and just as dangerous. I spun around, magic crackling defensively around my fingers. He emerged from the darkness like a figure from a dream, tall and elegant, with features that seemed carved from marble. But it was his eyes that caught me, ancient and sorrowful despite the gentle smile playing at his lips. They held centuries of pain, of watching civilizations rise and fall, of loving and losing until the weight of memory became almost unbearable. I knew instantly what he was. Vampire. The air grew thick with the scent of copper and roses, his power manifesting in response to mine. I'd been taught that vampire magic was corrupt, a twisted mockery of true power. But this was something else entirely. Dark and intoxicating, yes, but with an underlying complexity that called to something deep within my soul. "You should run," he said softly, though he made no move to attack. His fangs gleamed in the moonlight, not threateningly, but as a reminder of what he was, what he needed to survive. That would be the wise choice. I should have. Every lesson, every warning, every story I'd ever heard screamed at me to flee. The last witch who'd fallen for a vampire's charms had been found drained and cold, her magic twisted into something that still haunted the border woods. But beneath his predator's grace, I sensed a pain that echoed my own loneliness. "I'm not afraid." "No," he mused, taking a careful step closer. The shadows seemed to curl around him like loyal pets. "You're not, are you? I'm Marcus." "Lola." The name slipped out before I could stop it. My magic, rather than recoiling from his darkness as I'd been taught it would, reached for him like tendrils of light seeking warmth. The air between us crackled with possibility and danger. He noticed, his eyes widening slightly as purple sparkles danced in the air between us. They mixed with his shadows, creating complex patterns. "Your power, it's extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it. Most witchlight burns us, but yours? It's stronger tonight, under the lunar veil." I didn't know why I was telling him this, sharing secrets with a creature I'd been raised to despise. Yet something about his presence felt right, as if the universe itself had orchestrated this moment. The old books say the veil thins the boundaries between all realms, life and death, light and shadow. "Yes," Marcus said, now close enough that I could see flecks of blood red in his dark eyes. "It strips away illusion, showing us things as they truly are." His hand lifted, hesitating just shy of touching the magic that swirled around me. "May I?" I nodded, my breath catching as his fingers brushed through the violet light. Instead of dissipating as I expected, my magic intensified, wrapping around his hand like a caress. Where it touched him, his shadows transformed, becoming something neither light nor dark, but beautifully, terrifyingly other. A gasp escaped him, wonder replacing the sorrow in his expression. "Impossible," he whispered. "I haven't felt anything so purely alive in centuries." His voice caught on the word alive, centuries of loss echoing in that single syllable. My heart raced as he stepped closer still, our energies intertwining in the space between us. Everything I'd been taught about vampires, their coldness, their cruelty, their emptiness, crumbled in the face of the gentle awe I saw in Marcus's eyes. Yet I couldn't forget what he was. Even now, I could sense the predator beneath his civilized veneer, the hunger that was as much a part of him as magic was of me. That first night changed everything. We talked until dawn threatened the horizon, sharing pieces of ourselves that we'd never dared show anyone else. He told me of his turning centuries ago, of watching everyone he loved grow old and die while he remained unchanged, of the madness that took some vampires after their first century, when the weight of accumulated time became too much to bear. I spoke of the suffocating weight of coven expectations, of being the most powerful witch of my generation, but never being allowed to fully embrace that power, of the whispers that followed me, wondering if I'd follow in my grandmother's footsteps. They'd executed her for dark magic when I was young. Her screams still haunted my dreams. I should go, I said finally, though every fiber of my being protested the idea of leaving. The coven will notice my absence, and they will be looking for me. The stronger a witch's power, the more closely she was watched. Marcus caught my hand as I turned to leave, his touch sending shivers of electricity through my entire body. His skin was cool, but everywhere our flesh met, heat bloomed. Will you come back tomorrow night? I knew I shouldn't. The penalty for consorting with vampires was severe, exile at best, a fate worse than death at worst. The coven had ways of binding a witch's power that left her trapped inside her own mind, aware but unable to access the magic that was as essential as breathing. But looking into his eyes, I couldn't imagine staying away. Yes. That promise marked the beginning of our secret romance. Night after night, I slipped away from the coven to meet him in our clearing. Sometimes we talked for hours, sharing stories and dreams. Other times we sat in comfortable silence, my magic dancing around us both as he held me close. Always, there was the underlying current of danger, the knowledge that discovery would mean destruction for us both. Marcus showed me a different side of vampire nature than the stories I'd been told. He was thoughtful, kind, and carried a deep appreciation for beauty that centuries of life hadn't diminished. When he looked at me, I felt truly seen for the first time in my life. Yet he never hid his darker nature. I learned to recognize the signs of his hunger, the way his eyes tracked the pulse in my throat, how his fangs would emerge when passion ran high. Our first kiss happened beneath a crescent moon. His lips were cool against mine, but they warmed quickly as magic sparked between us. I tasted copper as his fangs grazed my lower lip, not breaking the skin, but promising darker pleasures. The moment we touched, power surged through me like never before, turning every nerve ending to starlight. Marcus pulled back with a gasp, his eyes wide with wonder and tinged with crimson. "Your magic," he breathed. "It's inside me. I can feel it." A drop of my blood stained his lips, and where it touched him, his skin seemed to glow from within. I could feel him too, the depth of his emotions, the weight of his years, the growing light in his soul that matched the glow in mine. But I also felt his darkness, the predator's instincts that were as much a part of him as his heart. It should have frightened me. Instead, it thrilled me. From that moment on, our bond grew stronger with each passing night. My magic responded to his presence instinctively, reaching for him even before I saw him. And though he had no magic of his own, I swore I could feel echoes of power stirring in him when we were together. Sometimes, in moments of passion, my magic would sink into him completely, making his eyes glow with violet fire. But paradise, as always, proved fleeting. The first sign of trouble came in the form of whispers among the coven elders. Stories of strange magical disturbances in the boundary woods, of power signatures that didn't match any known spells. Worse were the reports of dead animals found drained of blood, their bodies surrounded by circles of wildflowers that bloomed out of season, vampire feeding mixed with witch magic, in a way that terrified both sides. I knew they were sensing the unique blend of my magic with Marcus's vampire energy. But I couldn't stop meeting him. The thought of never seeing him again hurt more than any punishment the Coven could devise. My power grew stronger with each encounter, responding to his darkness in ways that both thrilled and frightened me. The vampire clan noticed too. Marcus told me of growing suspicion among his kind, of questions about where he disappeared to each night. Some claimed they could smell witch magic on him, while others whispered that he was changing, becoming something neither fully vampire nor fully human. We knew discovery was inevitable, but we clung to our stolen moments with desperate intensity. Each kiss carried the taste of danger, each touch held the possibility of revelation. My magic began to show traces of shadow, while Marcus's vampire nature took on aspects of light. We were changing each other in fundamental ways, becoming something entirely new. The breaking point came during the harvest moon. Blood magic ran strongest on such nights, and both vampires and witches grew more dangerous with its influence. We'd been careless, too lost in each other to notice the search parties until they were upon us. Witches and vampires converged on our clearing from all sides, their shock at finding us together quickly turning to rage. Abomination. The Coven leader's voice cracked like thunder as she saw Marcus's arms around me, my magic wrapped protectively around us both. Her own power manifested as sickly green light that reeked of decay, proof that her public face of purity hid darker practices. You dare corrupt one of our own. The vampire elder's response was equally venomous, his ancient form shifting between man and monster as his control slipped. Marcus, you dishonor your entire bloodline by consorting with this witch. Have you forgotten what their kind did to your sister? I felt Marcus tense beside me, an old pain flaring through our bond. Later, he would tell me the full story, how his sister had fallen in love with a witch centuries ago, how the Coven had turned her into a living weapon against her own kind. But in that moment, his voice remained steady. The only dishonor is in clinging to ancient hatred when love offers a better way. Love? The Coven leader spat the word like poison, and the grass withered where her spittle landed. There can be no love between light and shadow. Lola, step away from that creature now, and perhaps we can cleanse you of this taint. But I stood my ground, power building around me like a storm. Where my magic met Marcus's darkness, it created something new. Neither light nor shadow, but a force that made reality itself shudder. He's not the monster here. You are. All of you, letting blind prejudice rule your hearts. The battle that followed was chaos. Spells and vampire powers clashed as both sides attempted to tear us apart. Marcus and I fought back to back, his strength complementing my magic in perfect harmony. Blood and power mingled in the air as ancient enemies unleashed centuries of hatred. But we were badly outnumbered, and eventually, they separated us. As they dragged us away from one another, I heard Marcus's voice in my mind, stronger than ever before. The Astral Grove. It's real, Lola. Meet me at the ancient oak when the moon is highest tomorrow night. We'll find it together. They locked me in the Coven's strongest containment chamber, thinking their wards would hold me. The walls were carved with runes of binding and painted with the blood of sacrificed magical creatures. They didn't understand that my power had grown beyond their comprehension since meeting Marcus. Love had transformed my magic into something entirely new. I waited until the moon reached its peak, before shattering their wards like glass. The backlash killed the guards instantly, their bodies turning to ash as the corrupted magic they'd wielded consumed them from within. I felt a moment of regret, but not guilt. They'd chosen their path, as I had chosen mine. The ancient oak wasn't far. It stood exactly halfway between Coven and vampire territories, marking the boundary line neither side was supposed to cross. Its branches had been watered with blood from both sides over the centuries, creating a nexus of dark power that made my skin crawl. Marcus was already there when I arrived, looking battle-worn but determined. Fresh blood stained his lips. He'd had to fight his way out, too. I knew you'd come. He pulled me close, kissing me with fierce desperation before pulling back to cup my face in his hands. The Astral Grove lies 3 days' journey to the north, hidden in a valley where the veils between worlds are thinnest. But the path will be dangerous. Both sides will hunt us. I don't care, I said, meaning it with every fiber of my being. My magic reached for him instinctively, purple light twining with his shadows until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. I choose you, Marcus. I choose us. We ran that night, and every night that followed. During the day, Marcus took shelter in whatever safe spaces we could find, while I wove protection spells around us. At night, we traveled swiftly through shadow and starlight, always moving closer to our destination. They pursued us relentlessly. Witch hunters on spelled brooms filled the skies while vampire trackers stalked the ground. More than once we nearly fell into their traps. But each time, our bond grew stronger. My magic and his vampiric abilities began to blend in ways that should have been impossible, creating something entirely new. We encountered other horrors in the dark places between settlements, things that hunted both witch and vampire alike. Shapeshifters drunk on moonlight, ancient spirits hungry for the taste of magic, demons drawn to the unique power our union created. Each battle left us stronger, but also more changed, our very natures shifting into something that had never existed before. On the third night, as we crested a moonlit hill, we saw it. A valley filled with trees that glowed with their own inner light, their leaves shimmering with colors that didn't exist in our world. The Astral Grove. But something was wrong. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, and shadows writhed between the trees in ways that defied natural law. Our pursuers had caught up. Both Coven and Clan surrounded us, cutting off all escape routes except forward. We ran for the grove's entrance, magic and shadow swirling around us as spells and attacks rained down from all sides. Just before we reached the threshold, the Coven leader appeared in front of us, her power manifesting as burning white light that barely concealed the corruption at its core. You'll destroy everything we've built, everything we've protected for generations. No, I said, raising my hand as Marcus stood beside me, our powers perfectly united. We'll build something better. Power exploded from us both, my magic and his darkness weaving together into something beautiful and terrible. The combined force knocked our pursuers back, creating an opening just wide enough to slip through. But it also changed them, our unified power rewriting the very essence of those it touched. Witches gasped as shadows curled through their light, while vampires hissed as sparks of magic ignited in their blood. We crossed into the Astral Grove hand in hand. The moment we passed the boundary, everything changed. Power thrummed through the air around us, ancient and alive and hungry. The trees sang with voices like silver bells, but their song spoke of blood and transformation as much as beauty. A figure materialized before us, neither witch nor vampire, but something older than both. Her form shifted like smoke, but her eyes remained fixed on our joined hands. Where she walked, reality rippled like water, showing glimpses of other worlds, other possibilities. "You seek sanctuary," she said, her voice echoing with the weight of ages. "We seek acceptance," Marcus corrected gently, though his grip on my hand tightened. "A place where love matters more than ancient divisions." The figure smiled, and the entire grove seemed to brighten. Yet in that light, I saw the truth. This was no simple paradise, but a place of power, and transformation. Show me your hearts. Light filled us both, not the burning white of coven magic or the darkness of vampire power, but something in between, something new. In that moment, I felt everything Marcus felt, saw every memory that had shaped him, the pain of his turning, the loneliness of centuries, the joy of finding me. And he saw me too, all of me, every dream and fear and hope I'd ever held. Your love has already changed the world, the figure said softly. Look. We turned to see our pursuers frozen at the grove's entrance, watching in wonder as our combined power transformed the very air around them. Where light and shadow met, they created colors never seen before in our world. The hatred in their eyes slowly gave way to understanding as they witnessed what was possible when ancient enemies chose love instead of fear. The figure raised her hands, and the grove's power swept outward like a tide, touching everyone present. The walls between your peoples have stood for too long. Perhaps it's time for new traditions to take root. Changes rippled through both crowds. Witches' magic began to shimmer with hints of shadow, while darkness around the vampires sparked with points of light. The transformation was beautiful to behold, not a corruption of either side, but an evolution into something greater than both. The grove accepts you, the figure declared, and through you, it accepts all who choose love over hatred. You may make your home here, and any others who wish to follow your path will be welcomed as well. As the ancient figure's words echoed through the grove, I watched in awe as magic rippled outward like waves on a moonlit lake. Each pulse of power brought more changes, transforming the hatred that had divided our peoples for centuries into something beautiful and new. Marcus drew me close, his touch sending sparks of violet light dancing across my skin. Look, he whispered, gesturing to where the coven leader stood frozen in wonder. Her sickly green magic had transformed into swirls of emerald and silver, darkness and light weaving together in perfect harmony. The vampire elder approached us slowly, his ancient eyes wide with revelation. The predatory edge that had always marked his kind had softened, tempered by traces of witchlight that glimmered beneath his skin. In all my centuries, he murmured, I never imagined such beauty could exist. Our magics continued to blend and evolve, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced through the air like the aurora borealis. Where they touched the grove's crystalline trees, new blooms burst forth, flowers that glowed with their own inner light and spread a sense of peace through all who beheld them. The path you've chosen will not be easy, the grove's guardian cautioned, her form shifting like smoke in the wind. To bridge two worlds requires great strength of heart. Are you prepared for what lies ahead? I looked at Marcus, seeing in his eyes the same certainty I felt in my soul. Our bond hummed between us, stronger than ever. We are, we answered as one. She nodded, and the grove itself seemed to bow in response. Then let this place be your sanctuary and your home. Here, you may build the future you dream of, where others like you can find acceptance and peace. As if responding to her words, the grove began to change. The glowing trees parted, revealing a path that led deeper into the heart of this magical realm. Along its edges, small cottages grew from the living wood, each one a perfect blend of witchcraft and vampire aesthetics. Gardens flourished with night-blooming flowers that sparkled with magical energy. It's perfect, I breathed, watching as more changes rippled outward. A great hall emerged in the center of the grove, its walls transparent like crystal, but strong as diamond. Within its depths, I could see spaces for teaching, for healing, for bringing together those who sought to transcend the old divisions. Marcus pulled me closer, pressing a gentle kiss to my temple. His touch sent waves of pleasure through our bond, and I felt his joy mingling with mine. Our home, he murmured against my skin, the beginning of something new. Others stepped forward, young witches whose power had never quite fit the coven's rigid structures, vampires who had grown weary of endless darkness. In their eyes, I saw the same longing for acceptance that had first drawn Marcus and me together. The Guardian watched with approval as small groups began to explore the grove, their magics already starting to shift and change. "Remember," she said softly, "love is the greatest magic of all. Let it guide you as you build this new community." With those words, she faded into the mist, leaving us to begin our new life. The next few months passed in a blur of activity as we worked to establish our haven. Marcus and I took up residence in a cottage near the grove's heart, where morning sun filtered through enchanted windows that protected him from its harmful rays. Each night, we walked through the grove together, our combined power helping to strengthen the magical barriers that kept our sanctuary safe. More seekers arrived with each passing moon, those who dreamed of a world where love knew no boundaries. We welcomed them all, teaching them to embrace the beautiful fusion of light and shadow that our love had birthed. Our cottage became a place of warmth and tender moments. I learned to delight in the way Marcus would pull me into his arms as sunrise approached, his cool skin warming wherever our flesh met. He discovered a passion for tending the magical gardens, his former darkness now nurturing new life. On clear nights, we would lie in a meadow of luminous flowers, watching as our magics danced together in the star-filled sky. His fingers would trace patterns on my skin, each touch igniting sparks of pleasure that made the very air shimmer around us. In those moments, the weight of centuries seemed to lift from his shoulders, replaced by a peace I'd never seen before. The transformation of our peoples continued, spreading beyond the grove's boundaries. Those who had once hunted us now sought our guidance, drawn by the promise of evolution rather than corruption. The old hatred began to fade, replaced by curiosity and hope. One evening, as we sat entwined on our cottage's porch, watching the sunset paint the grove in shades of gold and purple, Marcus touched my face with infinite tenderness. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked softly. "Leaving everything behind?" I turned to kiss his palm, feeling our magic surge at the contact. "Never," I assured him. "You are my home now. This place, this life we're building together, it's everything I never knew I needed." His smile lit up the growing darkness, and when he kissed me, I tasted the future on his lips. Endless possibilities stretching out before us like the star-filled sky above. Our magic swirled around us, light and shadow dancing together in perfect harmony. In the years that followed, our haven grew into a beacon of hope for both witches and vampires. The grove blossomed under our care, its magic evolving to support the unique blend of powers that now called it home. Children born to our community manifested abilities never seen before: healing shadows, protective darkness, light that nurtured rather than burned. Marcus and I remained at its heart, our love growing stronger with each passing season. The weight of immortality that had once tormented him became a gift rather than a curse, offering us countless years to explore the depths of our connection and watch our dream take root. Every night, as I fall asleep in his arms, I think about that first meeting in the Boundary Woods. How the lunar veil had lifted ancient shrouds, allowing us to see past centuries of prejudice to the truth in one another's hearts. Our love had changed more than just ourselves. It had opened a door to a future where light and shadow could dance together in endless, beautiful possibility. The grove pulses with magic around us, a living testament to the power of choosing love over fear. And as I drift into dreams, wrapped in Marcus's embrace and surrounded by the home we've built together, I know that every step of our journey, every hardship we faced, led us exactly where we were meant to be. In the end, it wasn't about light conquering darkness or shadow subduing light. It was about finding the beauty that exists in between, in the sacred space where opposites meet and transform into something greater than either could be alone. Our love had written a new story, one that would echo through generations to come, proving that the most powerful magic of all lies in having the courage to choose love again and again, with every beat of our eternal hearts. Moonbeams danced across my gossamer wings as I floated through the masquerade, my fairy costume catching starlight with each step. Candlelight flickered against crystal chandeliers, casting shadows that waltzed along marble walls. I hadn't wanted to come to this Halloween party, but something, destiny perhaps, had pulled me here tonight. My best friend Sophie had insisted, spending hours helping me create my costume. Hand-painted wings that shimmered with actual crushed crystals, a gown that seemed woven from morning mist, and a crown of fresh herbs from my tiny apartment garden. The Victorian mansion hosting the party breathed old-world elegance. Vines crept up stone walls outside, and I'd noticed a neglected garden glimpsed through floor-to-ceiling windows. My fingers had itched to bring it back to life, to coax green things from the sleeping earth. That's what I did. Brought beauty back to forgotten spaces. My day job as a landscape designer paid the bills, but my true passion lay in healing herbs and the ancient magic of growing things. Weaving between guests in their elaborate costumes, I caught his gaze from across the grand ballroom. Amber eyes gleamed beneath an artfully crafted werewolf mask, dark fur framing a face that seemed to hold ancient secrets. His presence commanded attention without demanding it, a quiet power that drew me like a moth to flame. The wolf costume wasn't the typical Halloween store variety. It looked handmade, with actual leather work and what appeared to be real fur. Leaves and small twigs had been woven into the design, creating the impression of a creature that had just emerged from some enchanted forest. Our eyes locked through our masks, and the bustling party faded to whispers around us. He moved toward me with fluid grace that belied his fierce costume, weaving through the crowd as if drawn by an invisible thread. A subtle scent of cedar and sage surrounded him, so different from the cologne other men wore. "I'm Raphael," he said, his voice rich as honey over warm bread. His slight accent hinted at Mediterranean roots. "And you're the most enchanting fairy I've ever seen. The rosemary in your crown. It's the Spanish variety, isn't it? Rare in these parts." Heat bloomed in my cheeks beneath the shimmer of fairy dust makeup Sophie had insisted on. "Gina," I managed, grateful the glitter hid my blush. "Though tonight I'm going by Thistle. And yes, good eye. The rosemary came from my own plants. Most people wouldn't notice the difference." "Thistle," he repeated, tasting the name. "Perfect for a garden fairy. Beautiful but with hidden strength. Protection and pride in the language of flowers." My pulse quickened. "You know the language of flowers?" "Among other old magics," he said, his eyes twinkling behind the mask. "Your herbs. The rosemary for remembrance, lavender for peace and devotion woven through your hair. The tiny sachets of protective herbs tucked into your costume's seams. You practice the old ways." I caught my breath, surprised and delighted. "How did you know all that?" "The same way I sense the garden magic running through your veins. It calls to my own." He gestured to his costume. "The wolf represents more than meets the eye. In the old stories, we were the guardians of wild places, of ancient groves and hidden gardens." The music swelled around us, something classical and sweeping. Raphael extended his hand, somehow elegant despite the claws of his costume. "Dance with me? We can trade garden secrets while we move." Floating. That's how it felt as we moved together, my wings catching moonlight while his fur gleamed silver. Other couples blurred around us as we spoke of plants and poetry, of the magic that lives in small moments. His knowledge of herbs matched my passion for growing things. He knew the old names, the folk uses, the secret ways of planting by moon phases. "I restore gardens," he said as we waltzed. "Take old estates and bring their green spaces back to life. But my land, it needs something more. Someone with vision, with magic in their soul." "How much land?" I asked, attempting to sound casual while every cell within me vibrated with excitement. "An acre behind my grandfather's old stone cottage. Good earth. Just sleeping. Waiting." His eyes held mine. "It needs both sunlight and shadow to thrive properly." Dreams blossomed in my mind, raised beds overflowing with healing herbs, moonflowers climbing trellises, paths winding through beds of lavender. "Like a fairy and a wolf?" I suggested, surprising myself with my boldness. Raphael's smile beneath his mask held promises. "Exactly like that." We danced through the night, sharing stories between songs. He told me of his Italian grandmother who taught him herbcraft, of the gardens he'd restored across Europe before settling here. I shared tales of my own grandmother's teaching, the tiny fire escape garden that had sparked my passion, and the healing teas and tinctures I crafted in my kitchen. Dawn approached too quickly, painting the sky in watercolor hues. As the other guests began to leave, we lingered in the mansion's own neglected garden, trading secrets between overgrown rose bushes and whispered hopes beneath weeping willows. When he kissed me, the stars seemed to shimmer brighter overhead. His mask pushed up, mine tilted aside. The moment was pure magic. "Come see my land tomorrow," he whispered against my hair. "Bring your fairy magic. We could create something extraordinary together." The next day dawned crisp and clear. I dressed carefully. Sturdy boots, comfortable clothes, but I wove herbs into my braided hair for luck and protection. Raphael met me wearing well-worn work clothes, looking somehow equally handsome as he had in his wolf costume. His land took my breath away. The cottage was built from honey-colored stone, with climbing roses that had gone wild around the windows. The acre behind it sloped gently toward a small stream, perfect for a water garden. Old fruit trees dotted the landscape, their branches reaching for the sky like gnarled fingers. Weeks passed quickly after that first weekend. We spent our days planning and planting, transforming his wild acre into something from a fairy tale. Raphael built raised beds while I researched companion planting. We argued playfully over where to place the herb spiral, then celebrated each tiny seedling that pushed through the rich soil. Our garden became our sanctuary. Moonflowers and night-blooming jasmine for him, morning glories, and sun-loving herbs for me. We planted motherwort for love, roses for romance, and lavender for peace. Between the rows, our love grew like wild roses, unstoppable and beautiful, thorns and all. Each section of the garden held its own magic. The healing garden was filled with medicinal herbs: echinacea, yarrow, calendula, and chamomile. The kitchen garden overflowed with culinary herbs and old varieties of vegetables. The magical garden held the traditional witches' herbs: mugwort, wormwood, rue, and belladonna, carefully tended and respected. Raphael built archways for climbing plants, his strong hands shaping metal into elegant curves. I created moon gardens in shadowy corners, filling them with white flowers that glowed in twilight. Together we placed benches in secret nooks and created hidden paths that wound like dreams through the growing green. Spring painted our world with possibilities. We spent endless weekends working side by side, sharing thermos cups of tea and stolen kisses between tasks. Raphael taught me Italian plant names while we worked. I showed him my grandmother's secret ways of talking to plants. Our magics merged and grew stronger together. We created hidden nooks with curved benches, where we'd sit wrapped in blankets during midnight storms. Wind chimes sang silver songs while butterflies danced through dill flowers. Raphael carved protection runes into the garden gates, while I blessed each new planting with ancient whispered rhymes learned from my grandmother. The garden seemed to respond to our combined energy. Plants grew stronger, bloomed longer, and produced more abundantly than either of us had seen before. Visitors began to comment on the special feeling of the space, a sense of peace, of magic, of possibilities. Summer arrived with abundance. Together we harvested herbs by moonlight, his strength complementing my knowledge of drying times and storage. Our little cottage filled with bundles of herbs hanging from rafters, their fragrance wrapping around us like magic. We made medicines and teas, tinctures and treats, sharing our bounty with neighbors who soon spoke of the miraculous healing properties of our herbs. I gave up my apartment and moved into the cottage, bringing my own herbs and books to join his. We converted the spare bedroom into an herb processing room, with drying racks and storage shelves. The kitchen windowsill overflowed with potted herbs, and dried bouquets hung from every beam. Neighborhood children began to visit, drawn by the magic of the space. We taught them about butterflies and bees, and the importance of growing things. Local herbalists and gardeners sought us out, and soon we were hosting monthly gatherings where people could learn and share knowledge. Autumn painted our garden in gold and amber, colors that matched Raphael's eyes. As leaves fell, we planted bulbs for spring, each one a promise for our future. We added cold frames and greenhouses, extending our growing season like we extended our love, defying natural limits through dedication and care. The cottage transformed alongside the garden. Raphael's grandfather's old furniture found new life with fresh cushions I sewed, stuffing the fabric with lavender and herbs for sweet dreams. We painted walls in earthy colors and hung dried flower wreaths in every room. The kitchen became a workshop where we experimented with new herbal blends and recipes. Even in winter, our garden lived. Evergreen herbs stood strong against snow. Witch hazel bloomed like yellow stars. We spent long evenings by the fire, planning next year's plantings while sharing spiced tea made from our own herbs. The wolf and the fairy, creating magic from soil and love. 1 year after our first meeting, on Halloween night, Raphael led me to the garden's heart. He'd created an arch of roses and moonflowers, their blooms glowing like pearls in the silver light. This time, we wore no masks, just our true selves, surrounded by the magic we'd grown together. "You've transformed more than this garden," he said, dropping to one knee in the soil we'd enriched together. The ring he offered gleamed in the moonlight, silver, set with tiny pressed herbs in clear resin. "You've transformed my whole world. Marry me, my fairy queen. Rule this magical realm by my side." Tears sparkled on my cheeks like morning dew. "We did it together," I whispered. The garden needed both of us, sunlight and shadow, morning and night, fairy and wolf. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Our wedding was held in the garden we'd created, fairy lights twinkling in trees we'd planted together. Herbs and flowers we'd grown ourselves decorated every surface. I wore a gown embroidered with herbs and flowers, and Raphael wore a suit with a boutonniere of herbs for love and fidelity. The air smelled of lavender and roses, of dreams made real through patience and love. We wrote our own vows, promising to tend to our love as carefully as we tended our garden, to nurture growth, to weather storms together, to always make space for magic. Our rings were carved with tiny leaves and flowers, blessed under the full moon in our herb garden. Now, years later, our garden has become known throughout the region as a place of healing and hope. People travel from miles around to walk our herb-lined paths, to sit in our meditation spaces, and purchase our healing blends. Some say they can feel the magic in the air, the love between fairy and wolf that infuses every plant, every stone. We've added new sections each year, a butterfly garden, a bee-friendly meadow, and a small orchard of heritage fruit trees. Each addition reflects another facet of our growing love, another layer of magic we've discovered together. The garden has become a living book of our love story, written in flowers and herbs and twining vines. Each Halloween, we host a masquerade in our garden. Raphael wears his wolf mask, I don my wings, and we'd dance beneath the stars like we did that first night. But now we're surrounded by the magic we've grown together, a living testament to how love, like a garden, can transform the wildest space into something beautiful. Young lovers often ask us our secret. We just smile and share what we've learned. Love, like a garden, needs both light and shadow. It needs space to grow wild and boundaries to grow strong. It needs daily tending and magic in equal measure. But most importantly, it needs two hearts willing to grow together through all seasons. Every morning, I still wake to find dew on the herbs like scattered diamonds. Every evening, I still watch moonflowers open their faces to the stars. And every moment between, I fall more in love with the wolf who helped a fairy create this magical space. This garden, where two worlds merge into something more powerful than either could be alone. Our cottage has grown too, with a sunroom full of tender plants and a workshop where we teach others the old ways. We've published books on herbal lore and magical gardening, sharing our knowledge while keeping the deepest magic for ourselves. Our unique blends of tea and healing herbs are sought after across the country. Some say you can't build a life on fairy tales, but Raphael and I know better. We've grown our own fairy tale from the ground up, nurtured it with love and intention, and watched it bloom into something more magical than dreams. Our garden stands as living proof that when the right souls meet, magic isn't something that just happens in stories. It grows wild and free, like herbs breaking through stone, like love blooming in unexpected places, like a fairy and a wolf creating their own enchanted world. Each season brings new growth, new challenges, and new magic to discover together. Our love, like our garden, continues to evolve and flourish, sending roots deep into the earth while reaching ever skyward. Sleep now, dream of magical gardens and masked balls, of love that transforms and grows. For in every seed we plant, in every flower that blooms, there lives the possibility of magic. Let the whispers of herbs and the song of night-blooming flowers guide your dreams to peaceful places. Beneath the moon's gentle glow, our garden whispers ancient secrets. True love, like the most potent herbs, grows stronger with each passing season. And if you listen closely to the wind in the roses, you might hear our story carried on the breeze, the fairy and the wolf who grew a paradise from love. Rest here a while in our garden of dreams, where magic blooms eternal and love grows wild and free. Let the peace we've cultivated seep into your soul, and may you find your own magical garden of the heart. For in the end, love is the greatest magic of all, and every garden holds the potential for transformation. Sweet dreams, dear ones, and remember, sometimes the most enchanted stories begin with a simple costume party and a heart open to magic. Candlelight danced across the marble floors of London's most prestigious ballroom, casting golden shadows that matched the shimmering champagne in crystal flutes. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my silk gown rustling softly with each breath, watching the swirl of couples moving to the gentle strains of a waltz. The air was thick with the scent of roses and orange blossoms, brought in by the cartload to decorate the Hartley's annual spring ball. Mother had outdone herself with my presentation this season. The pale blue silk of my gown caught the light perfectly, its silver embroidery glinting like frost on morning flowers. My dark curls were arranged in the latest fashion, with tiny diamond pins that sparkled like stars against the deep brown waves. At 18, I was considered the crown jewel of this year's debutantes, though the thought brought me little joy. I knew what it meant. An endless parade of suitors, each more concerned with my dowry than my heart. The season had already brought forth a dozen proposals, each more calculated than the last. Lord Pembroke with his aging estate and mountain of debt. The young Duke of Ashworth, barely 16 and pushed forward by his ambitious mother. Even my childhood friend Thomas had tried his hand, though we both knew there was no spark between us. "You look utterly bored, my lady." The voice carried the hint of a smile, rich and warm like honey. I turned to find myself staring into the most remarkable pair of green eyes I'd ever seen. Nicholas Owensby stood before me, the notorious charmer of London society. His dark hair fell in perfect waves, and his evening clothes were immaculate. A perfectly tailored black coat that emphasized his broad shoulders, a crisp white cravat, and a subtle gold pin that winked in the candlelight. But it was his smile that caught and held my attention. Crooked and genuine, nothing like the practiced simpers of other gentlemen. "I assure you, sir, I am perfectly entertained by my own thoughts," I replied, lifting my chin slightly. His reputation preceded him, a different lady on his arm at every ball, a trail of broken hearts in his wake. Just last week, I'd overheard Lady Winterbourne warning her daughter away from his dangerous charms. He laughed, the sound rich and unexpected. Lady Caroline Bentley, defending the excitement of standing alone in a corner. I must hear these fascinating thoughts of yours. The orchestra began a new piece, Mozart, one of my favorites, and he extended his hand. "Dance with me?" I hesitated, but something in his eyes made me place my gloved hand in his. As he led me onto the floor, I felt the eyes of the entire room upon us. The music began, and we moved together as if we'd danced 1,000 times before. His hand at my waist was steady and sure, his touch sending warmth spreading through my entire body. "Your thoughts, my lady," he prompted, guiding me through a turn with effortless grace. "I was thinking how tedious it is to be paraded about like a prize mare at auction," I admitted, surprising myself with my honesty. Each potential buyer examining my teeth and checking my pedigree. His eyes widened slightly, then crinkled at the corners. Refreshingly direct. And here I thought you were the perfect society miss. Perfect is rather dull, don't you think? The dance continued, but something had shifted. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, ranging from books to art to travel. He was surprisingly well read, challenging my opinions on Byron with clever observations that made me laugh despite myself. When he spoke of his travels in Italy, his eyes lit up with genuine passion that made my heart flutter. "You should see Venice in the moonlight," he said, his voice dropping low. "The canals turn to ribbons of silver, and the whole city feels like a dream." "You make it sound magical," I whispered, lost in the picture he painted. "Everything can be magical if you look at it the right way." His hand tightened slightly on my waist, and I realized how close we'd drawn together, closer than propriety strictly allowed. When the music ended, I found I didn't want to let go of his hand. He seemed equally reluctant to release me, his fingers lingering against mine as he bowed. That night marked the beginning of what seemed like a dream. At every social gathering, Nicholas sought me out. We would find quiet corners to discuss everything and nothing, our conversations punctuated by lingering looks and brief touches that set my heart racing. He showed me a London I'd never known, secret gardens hidden between townhouses, tiny bookshops with treasures in their dusty corners, and quiet moments that belonged only to us. One afternoon, he took me to a hidden courtyard garden he'd discovered. Roses climbed the ancient walls, their pink and white blooms nodding in the gentle breeze. We sat on a stone bench, reading poetry together, his shoulder pressed warm against mine. "She walks in beauty, like the night," he quoted softly, but his eyes weren't on the book. They were on me, intense and full of something that made my breath catch. "Of cloudless climes and starry skies," I finished, my voice barely a whisper. His hand found mine, his thumb tracing circles on my palm through my thin glove. The touch sent shivers up my arm, and I knew I was falling deeply, irrevocably in love with him. I knew what people whispered behind their fans, that I was just another conquest for the notorious Mr. Owensby. But when he looked at me, I saw something different in his eyes, something real, something that made me believe in magic and true love and all the things I'd dismissed as girlish fantasies, until the night of the Hartley's summer ball. I had arrived late, having spent too long choosing the perfect gown, deep emerald silk that made my eyes sparkle and my skin glow like moonlight. The ballroom was crowded, and I searched for Nicholas among the dancers. When I didn't see him, I made my way to the terrace for air. That's when I heard her laugh, musical and intimate, followed by his unmistakable voice. I turned the corner to find Nicholas pressed close to Lady Penelope Howard, his hand cupping her cheek as she gazed up at him adoringly. Her golden hair gleamed in the moonlight, and her beauty made my heart sink. "You know you're the only one who truly understands me," he murmured, and my world shattered. I fled before either could see me, but the image was burned into my mind. How foolish I'd been to think I was different, special. I was just another in his long line of conquests, another notch in his belt of broken hearts. The next morning, I convinced my parents to let me retire to our country estate in Derbyshire. I claimed the London air disagreed with me, that I needed rest. In truth, I needed to escape the whispers, the pitying looks, and most of all, the chance of seeing Nicholas again. The countryside welcomed me with open arms. Spring was in full bloom, painting the rolling hills in vibrant greens and soft purples. I threw myself into managing the estate, learning everything I could from our steward. The physical work in the gardens helped ease the ache in my heart, and slowly, I began to feel like myself again. I spent my days in the rose garden my mother had planted years ago, pruning and tending the delicate blooms. Something was healing in nurturing beauty, in watching life unfold according to its own gentle rhythm. The roses didn't care about society's expectations or broken hearts. They simply grew, bloomed, and shared their beauty with the world. But peace was not to be mine for long. One misty morning, as I walked through the rose garden, I heard hoofbeats on the gravel drive. My heart stopped when I saw Nicholas dismounting, looking travel-worn but determined. His clothes were dusty from the road, his cravat slightly askew, so different from his usual immaculate appearance. He carried something small in his hand that caught the early morning light. "Caroline," he called out, his voice carrying across the garden. "Please, let me explain." I turned to leave, but his next words froze me in place. "What you saw that night, it wasn't what you think." Lady Penelope was distraught over her brother's illness. I was comforting an old friend, nothing more. I've been a fool in many ways, but never about my feelings for you. I faced him slowly, steeling myself against the sight of him. But what I saw made me pause. Gone was the polished dandy of London society. This Nicholas looked raw and vulnerable, his eyes shadowed with lack of sleep. There was an earnestness in his expression I'd never seen before. "Why are you here?" I asked, proud that my voice remained steady. He opened his hand, revealing an ancient ring. The gold was worn smooth with age, set with a stone that seemed to hold starlight within its depths. As the morning light touched it, colors swirled in its heart like the northern lights I'd read about in books. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said softly. "There's a story in my family about it, that it was blessed by a wise woman centuries ago, enchanted to reveal true love. It shows the bearer's heart's desire, but only if that love is pure and unselfish." As he spoke, the stone began to glow with a soft, warm light. Inside its depths, I saw images forming. Nicholas and me in the bookshop, laughing over Byron. The two of us walking in the secret garden, his jacket around my shoulders against the evening chill. Every genuine moment we'd shared. But I also saw moments I hadn't witnessed. Nicholas pacing his study late at night, writing and discarding letter after letter to me. Him questioning his past choices, realizing how empty his life had been before we met. "I've changed, Caroline," he continued, taking a step closer. His familiar scent, sandalwood and leather, wrapped around me, bringing back a flood of memories. The man I was before, the one who flirted and played at love, he died the moment I met you. You showed me what real connection means, what it is to truly see someone and be seen in return. The ring pulsed brighter, and I felt a warmth spread through me, like sunshine after rain. Magic tingled in the air around us, ancient and powerful. The roses seemed to lean closer, their perfume intensifying as if nature itself held its breath to witness this moment. "I don't expect you to forgive me immediately," Nicholas continued, reaching for my hand but stopping just short of touching me. "But I'm asking for a chance to prove myself, to show you the man I've become, the man you helped me become." The morning mist swirled around us, touched with golden light. In that moment, I felt something shift in the air, as if fate itself held its breath. The magic of the ring seemed to hum, a melody that matched the beating of my heart. "How do I know this isn't just another pretty speech?" I whispered, even as something deep within me recognized the truth in his words. He held out the ring. "See for yourself." With trembling fingers, I took it. The moment it touched my skin, the world around us changed. The garden blurred, and I saw visions in the stone. Nicholas spending weeks researching his family history to find the ring. His sleepless nights after I left London. The truth of that evening with Lady Penelope. I saw him comforting her as she wept over her brother's worsening condition. Saw how he thought of me even in that moment, wishing he could share his own experiences of losing a sibling young. But more than that, I saw his heart laid bare before me. The love there was real, profound, and transformative. I saw how meeting me had awakened something in him he'd never known was sleeping. A desire for depth, for meaning, for a love that could last beyond a single dance or stolen kiss. The visions faded, leaving us standing in the misty garden, changed by what we'd seen. Nicholas reached for my hand again, and this time I let him take it. His touch was gentle and reverent, as if he held something infinitely precious. "I love you, Caroline Bentley," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not for your beauty or your status, but for your brilliant mind, your kind heart, and the way you challenge me to be better. I love you for the person you are when no one else is watching. The woman who reads Byron in the garden and dreams of more than society's expectations." Tears blurred my vision as I looked up at him. The morning sun broke through the mist, surrounding us in a golden glow. The ring warmed in my palm, its magic pulsing like a heartbeat. "I love you too," I whispered, the words carrying the weight of truth. "The real you, not the mask you wore in London." He pulled me close, one hand cupping my face as the other wrapped around my waist. When our lips met, the ring's magic surged around us. Golden light spiraled upward, surrounding us in a shower of sparks that felt like falling stars. The roses burst into sudden bloom, their petals opening to release waves of heavenly fragrance. At that moment, I understood what the old legend meant. True love wasn't just about passion or romance, but about seeing and accepting someone completely, flaws and all. Nicholas slipped the ring onto my finger, where it fit perfectly as if it had been waiting for this moment throughout the centuries. The stone settled into a gentle glow, a constant reminder of the magic that had brought us together, and the love that would keep us that way. "Tell me more about Venice," I said softly, leaning into his embrace. His smile was radiant as he held me close. "I'll do better than that. I'll take you there. We'll watch the moonlight on the canals together, and I'll show you all the magic I promised." As we walked through the garden together, planning our future, I realized that sometimes the greatest magic isn't in enchanted rings or ancient legends, but in the simple courage it takes to open your heart and trust again. Nicholas had proven that love, when real and true, has the power to transform not just the heart, but the very soul. And so began our new chapter, written not in the glittering ballrooms of London, but in the quiet moments we shared, in the gentle magic of everyday love, and in the promise of a future filled with all the adventures we would face together. The ring on my finger glowed softly, a reminder that some promises, once made with a pure heart, become the most powerful magic of all. In the years that followed, we often returned to that rose garden where we found our way back to one another. Each visit, the roses seemed to bloom a little brighter, their perfume a little sweeter, as if blessed by the magic of that morning. And though we traveled the world together, seeing all the wonders Nicholas had promised, we always knew that the greatest magic was the love we shared. A love that, like the enchanted ring, would shine brighter with each passing year. I never meant to fall in love during the longest night of the year. In our village, where darkness draped across the sky like crushed velvet, love was as rare as summer sunshine. We were practical people, born of ice and necessity, our hearts supposedly as frozen as the tundra beneath our feet. But as I stood beneath the cosmic dance of emerald and violet lights that painted our eternal winter nights, my voice rising to meet them, I discovered that even the coldest hearts could thaw. The air that night bit at my exposed skin with needle-sharp teeth, but I barely noticed. My voice carried across the pristine snow, weaving through the air in silvery threads that seemed to catch the starlight. Above me, the aurora responded, rippling in waves of jade and amethyst, sending warmth cascading down over our sleeping village. The ancient magic hummed in my blood, passed down through generations of my family, though only my grandmother had known of my gift before she disappeared into the endless white 5 years ago. The storm announced itself with a deep rumble that shook the ground beneath my feet. I watched it approach from my position atop Crystal Hill, the wind carrying the scent of snow and something else, something ancient and sharp, like metal left too long in the cold. The approaching wall of white stretched from earth to sky, swallowing the stars in its path. My song faltered as I spotted a dark figure stumbling through the thickening snow. The lights above dimmed in response, their warmth receding, and the bitter cold crept back into the air. The figure collapsed at the base of the hill, and without thinking, I ran down the icy slope, my boots crunching in the fresh powder. The wind whipped my hair, which shimmered with the same ethereal colors as the aurora above, across my face, carrying the scent of pine and frost. He was barely conscious when I reached him, his skin pale as moonlight against his dark beard, lips tinged an alarming shade of blue. Frost clung to his eyelashes like tiny diamonds, and his breathing came in shallow puffs of white mist. Despite our village's wariness of outsiders, I couldn't leave him to freeze. I hooked my arms under his and dragged him toward my cabin at the village's edge, my muscles burning with the effort. Inside my cabin, the fire cast dancing shadows on walls, lined with drying herbs and crystals, my grandmother's legacy. I stoked the flames until they roared, their heat pushing back the infiltrating cold. As I wrapped him in my grandmother's quilts, each one stitched with patterns that seemed to move in the firelight, ancient symbols of protection hidden in their designs. Color slowly returned to his cheeks. His features were striking, strong jaw softened by dark curls, high cheekbones dusted with frost, and something hauntingly familiar in the curve of his mouth that I couldn't quite place. My fingers itched to trace the line of his jaw, to discover if his skin was as smooth as it looked beneath the stubble. When his eyes finally fluttered open, they revealed irises the color of glacier ice shot through with threads of silver, eyes that seemed to hold centuries of secrets. "The lights," he mumbled, voice rough like stones tumbling down a mountainside. "I almost had them." "Rest," I whispered, pressing a cup of hot birch tea to his lips. The steam carried the sweet, earthy scent of herbs and honey. "You're safe now." "I'm Brian." He managed between sips, his fingers brushing mine as he took the cup. Even that slight touch sent sparks of warmth racing up my arm. "I've been searching. The Keeper of Lights." My hand trembled slightly, spilling a few drops of tea that instantly crystallized on the wooden floor. The Keeper of Lights was an old legend, one my grandmother had warned me about. A magical being who could command the aurora, bringing warmth and hope to the frozen north. A being like me. A being that others had hunted for centuries. "There's no such thing," I lied, pulling the quilts tighter around him. The patterns seemed to shift beneath my fingers, responding to my unease. "Rest now. The storm is getting worse." And it was. The wind rattled my windows with unprecedented fury, and even through the thick logs of my cabin walls, I could hear its mournful howl. This was no ordinary storm. It carried something ancient and angry in its voice, something that made the protective crystals along my windowsills hum with warning. Over the next days, as the storm raged on, Brian recovered his strength. I found myself drawn to him despite my suspicions, fascinated by his tales of travels across the frozen wilderness. He spoke of distant cities where summer lasted more than a few weeks, of forests that stayed green all year, and of mysteries that lay buried beneath the ice. His voice was hypnotic, rich as honey, and smooth as river stones, and I often caught myself leaning closer just to feel its vibrations in the air between us. "What really brought you here?" I asked one evening as we sat before the fire, sharing a meal of roasted fish and preserved cloudberries. The berries burst on my tongue with the memory of summer, their tartness a sharp contrast to the rich, savory meat. Brian's eyes reflected the flames as he answered, the silver threads in his irises dancing. "Would you believe me if I said the lights led me here? I've been following them for months, tracking their patterns. They're different here, stronger, more alive." His gaze met mine, and something flickered there that made my breath catch, almost as if someone was calling to them. The fire crackled between us, sending sparks dancing up the chimney like earthbound stars. I watched one spiral upward, attempting to steady my racing heart. "The lights have always been strong here," I said softly, tracing the rim of my wooden cup with one finger. "My grandmother used to say they were drawn to our village's songs." Brian set his plate aside and moved closer, the furs beneath him rustling with the motion. The firelight caught in his dark curls, creating a halo effect that made him look otherworldly. "Tell me about her," he said, his voice gentle. "Your grandmother. She taught you the old songs, didn't she?" The question caught me off guard. Few in the village ever spoke of my grandmother anymore, as if her disappearance had frozen her memory as surely as the tundra froze everything else. "How did you know?" His eyes met mine, serious now. "Because I heard you singing on the hill that night. It was an ancient melody, one that hasn't been sung in centuries." He reached into his shirt and pulled out something that gleamed in the firelight, a crystal pendant that pulsed with its own inner light. "This crystal responds to old magic. It led me here, following the echo of your voice." The crystal's light rippled with colors that matched the aurora outside, and something deep within me resonated with its power. "What are you?" I whispered, even as I found myself leaning closer, drawn by the familiar magic that emanated from the stone.
"A guardian," he answered, letting the crystal swing gently between us. "We protect the old magics, keep their secrets safe, and we've been searching for the last keeper of light since the storm singer began to rise." His free hand found mine, his touch sending warmth cascading through my body. "Your grandmother was a guardian too, Aurora. She didn't disappear. She went into hiding to protect you." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. What? No. But even as I protested, memories surfaced. The strange symbols she'd sewn into my quilts, the crystals she'd placed at every window, the urgent way she'd taught me to hide my gift. "The storm that night," I breathed. "The night she left." Brian's thumb traced gentle circles on my palm, each touch sending shivers of warmth up my arm. "She faced the storm singer to protect you," he said softly. "She knew your power was growing too strong to hide. The lights above our village that night, they lit up the entire northern sky. The storm singer sensed you then. But your grandmother..." His voice caught. "She led it away from here, sacrificing herself to keep you safe." Tears froze on my cheeks before they could fall. The aurora outside pulsed in response to my grief, casting waves of green and violet through the windows. "Why didn't she tell me?" "To protect you," Brian said, reaching up to brush away my frozen tears. His touch lingered on my cheek, warm and comforting. "The less you knew, the safer you were. But now..." He glanced at the window, where frost patterns were spreading with unnatural speed across the glass. "Now the storm singer has grown too powerful to hide from." The protective crystals along the windowsills hummed, their pitch rising in warning. The temperature in the cabin dropped so rapidly I could see our breath crystallizing in the air between us. Brian's pendant pulsed faster, its light taking on a warning red tinge. "It's here," he whispered, just as the first window exploded inward in a shower of ice and glass. Through the opening stepped a figure that seemed to form from the storm itself, swirling snow and darkness given shape, with eyes that glowed like the heart of a glacier. The temperature plummeted further, and the fire in the hearth sputtered and died. "The last keeper," it spoke, its voice the sound of avalanches and cracking ice. "Your grandmother's sacrifice was in vain, child. Winter claims all in the end." Brian moved in front of me, his pendant blazing like a star in the darkness. "You'll not touch her," he growled. And in that moment, I saw the warrior beneath the traveler's exterior. The crystal's light formed a barrier between us and the storm singer, but frost was already creeping up Brian's legs, threatening to encase him in ice. Something snapped inside me then. Seeing him in danger broke through the last of my hesitation. I opened my mouth and began to sing. Not the gentle songs I usually sang to the lights, but something deeper, more primal. It rose from some ancient place within me, a melody that spoke of summer meadows and warm rains, of life persisting through the longest winters. The aurora responded immediately, pouring through the broken window in ribbons of light that wrapped around us like a living shield. The ice attacking Brian melted away, and the storm singer recoiled. Brian's crystal resonated with my voice, its light joining with the aurora, until the cabin blazed with the warmth of 1,000 summers. The storm singer howled in rage as my song grew stronger, the sound of shattering glaciers competing with the melody pouring from my heart. The aurora danced around us in ever-tightening spirals, its light taking on the golden warmth of summer sunsets. Brian's crystal pulsed in harmony with my voice, our magics intertwining like lovers' hands. "Impossible," the storm singer snarled, its form flickering between solid and vapor. "The old songs were lost." "Not lost," my grandmother's voice rang out from behind the creature. "Protected." She stepped through the storm, unchanged,
her silver hair streaming behind her like moonlight on snow, her eyes bright with ancient power. The protective symbols in her quilts blazed to life, forming a web of light that trapped the storm singer in its center. "Grandmother," I breathed between verses, my song never faltering. The aurora responded to my joy, its colors shifting to deep rose and gold. "Sing, my darling," she called, raising her voice to join mine. "Sing of spring after winter, of warmth returning to frozen hearts." Brian's voice joined next, deep and resonant as thunder, his guardian magic amplifying our song through his crystal. The three-part harmony filled the cabin, spilled out into the night, and rose to meet the dancing lights above. Each note carried memories of warmth and life, summer berries bursting with sweetness, spring streams breaking through ice, autumn leaves dancing on warm winds. The storm singer thrashed within its prison of light, its power diminishing as our song grew stronger. "You cannot end winter," it raged, but its voice held a note of desperation now. "We don't want to end winter," I sang into the harmony. Understanding bloomed in my heart like the first flowers of spring. Winter is necessary, beautiful, sacred, but it must dance with spring, not dominate it. The aurora poured through every window now, wrapping around the storm singer in ribbons of light. Where it touched the creature's icy form, the frost softened into morning dew, the harsh angles melting into gentle curves. The sound of its rage transformed note by note into something like music. "Choose," Brian's crystal flared as he spoke. "Choose to be part of the dance, not its destroyer." My grandmother's voice rose in the ancient language, words of power that made the air shimmer. "Return to what you were meant to be. Winter's grace, not its fury." Inside its cocoon of light, the storm singer's form shifted one final time. The darkness fled its body like storm clouds parting, leaving behind a figure of pure, crystalline beauty. No longer a creature of destruction, but winter in its most elegant form. Frost without bite, snow without burial, ice without deadly intent. As our song faded into a newfound silence, the transformed being bowed its head. "I had forgotten," it whispered, its voice now like snow falling on cedars. "The dance is everything." "Welcome back to it," my grandmother smiled, looking exactly as she had when she'd taught me my first songs. The sunrise that followed was unlike any I'd seen before. The aurora remained visible, even as the sky lightened, its colors merging with the dawn in impossible beauty. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world transformed, still winter-wrapped, but gentle now, full of possibility. Brian's arms encircled me as we watched the new day dawn, his warmth seeping into my tired bones. "I knew I'd find something incredible when I followed the lights," he murmured against my hair. "I just didn't expect to find everything." My grandmother touched the crystal at his neck, then the one she wore, finally resting her hand over my heart. "The old magics aren't meant to be hoarded or hidden anymore," she said. "They're meant to be shared, like love itself." Her eyes twinkled. "Why do you think the lights led him to you?" I turned in Brian's arms to face him, seeing in his glacier blue eyes the same wonder I felt. "Will you stay?" I asked. "Help me learn to be both keeper and guardian?" His kiss was warm as summer sunshine, sweet as cloudberries, and full of promise. Wild horses couldn't drag me away. He smiled against my lips, or even wild winter storms. Above us, the aurora danced on into the morning, painting the sky with the colors of magic and love. The transformed storm singer rose to join them, its presence now adding to their beauty rather than seeking to destroy it. And in that moment, I understood what my grandmother had always taught me, that the greatest magic comes not from power or control, but from finding the perfect balance between opposite forces. Winter still rules our village for most of the year, but now it's a winter full of warmth and wonder. The lights dance every night as Brian and I sing to them, our voices joined in harmony with the ancient magic that flows through this land. My grandmother stays close, teaching us both the old ways while embracing the new paths we forged together. They say love blooms brightest in the coldest places. Standing beneath the eternal dance of lights, my voice rising to meet them, my heart beating in time with Brian's, I know this to be true. For in the longest nights and the deepest cold, we found a warmth that could thaw even winter itself. And that perhaps is the greatest magic of all. The morning fog rolled through the streets of Cedar Grove, wrapping our small town in its pearl gray embrace. I pressed my forehead against my bedroom window, watching my breath create ephemeral galaxies on the glass. The cold March air seeped through the thin pane, carrying the scent of wet earth and approaching spring. At 18, I had learned more about adult responsibilities than most of my classmates, especially when the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter grew taller than my mother's ever-present coffee cup. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind as I traced frost patterns in the condensation. A real lucky penny finds you when you need it most. How many times had I heard him say that while sitting in his worn leather armchair, the leather cracked and butter soft with age, his eyes twinkling with the magic of possibility. But Grandpa Patrick was gone now, taking with him the scent of pipe tobacco and peppermint, and with him, it seemed, had gone all the luck from our family. In the kitchen, my mother moved quietly, her nurse's scrubs rustling softly as she prepared for another double shift. The familiar sounds of the morning filled the air, the gentle gurgle of the ancient coffee maker, the soft click of pills being counted into my grandmother's weekly organizer, and the muted thud of bills being sorted by urgency. These days, nothing goes to waste in our home. I watched as Mom tucked her hospital ID into her pocket, her hands bearing the dry, cracked skin of someone who washed them 100 times a day. "You'll check on Grandma Rose today?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine in the streaked mirror above the sink. Her smile, though tired, held all the warmth of summer sunshine, and her movements carried the lingering scent of the lavender hand cream she always used, the last bottle from the 3-pack Grandpa had given her before he passed. "Of course, Mom." I hugged her thin frame, breathing in the mingled scents of coffee, antiseptic, and the fabric softener we'd used since I could remember. "I'll make sure she takes her medication and eats lunch. I've got classes until 3, but I'll head straight thereafter." The walk to the community college that St. Patrick's Day morning felt longer than usual. The March wind whispered through bare tree branches, carrying with it the promise of spring and the lingering bite of winter. My boots clicked against the concrete sidewalk, the sound echoing in the quiet morning air. I clutched my worn laptop bag closer, thinking about the partial scholarship that barely covered my tuition, the mounting medical bills from Grandma's last hospital stay, and the way our heat only worked some days now, leaving us to huddle under quilts in the evening. That's when I saw it, a glint of copper against the gray sidewalk, like a star fallen to earth. A penny, lying heads up, gleaming as if it had just been minted. The copper surface caught the weak morning sunlight, sending out a warm glow that called to me. I knelt, my heart beating a little faster, my breath creating small clouds in the chilly air. As my fingers closed around the coin, an unexpected warmth spread through my hand, up my arm, and straight into my chest. The metal felt almost alive against my skin, thrumming with a gentle energy that made my fingertips tingle. "Find a penny, pick it up, and all day long you'll have good luck," I whispered, remembering another of my grandfather's favorite sayings. The penny felt different somehow, special, as if it carried a hint of magic within its copper surface. At the college, the day unfolded differently than usual. In the student center, I noticed Jonathan, a fellow nursing student who always sat alone, his shoulders hunched under the weight of invisible burdens. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his untouched textbook, and today, his eyes seemed particularly distant, lost in thoughts no 18-year-old should have to carry. Without fully understanding why, I knew what I had to do. I approached his table, the penny growing warmer with each step, my boots silent against the industrial carpet. The student center hummed with its usual morning chaos. The whir of laptops, the murmur of study groups, the hiss of the espresso machine. But at Jonathan's table, silence hung like a heavy curtain. "Hey," I said, sliding into the chair across from him. The plastic seat was cool through my jeans, and I smelled the sharp tang of hospital-grade coffee mixed with the anxiety of upcoming midterms. Jonathan looked up, surprise flickering across his face like sunlight through stained glass. I pulled out the penny and held it out to him. In the fluorescent lighting, the copper glowed with an inner fire. "This is for you. It's lucky, really lucky. I think you need it more than I do today." Jonathan stared at the penny, then at me, confusion in his tired eyes. "Why would you give me something lucky?" "Because sometimes the luckiest thing isn't finding something. It's giving it away." The words came from somewhere deep inside me, sounding more like my grandfather than myself, carrying the same warm wisdom that used to fill his stories on cold winter nights. The next day, Jonathan found me before anatomy class, his face transformed by excitement. "You won't believe what happened. After you gave me the penny, I finally heard back about that hospital internship I applied for months ago. They had an unexpected opening, and they want me to start next week. It's perfect. The schedule works around my classes, and it comes with a small stipend. I was about to drop out, you know. I couldn't figure out how to keep paying for school." Over the next few weeks, I watched as the penny made its way through the college, leaving little trails of magic in its wake. Jonathan gave it to Professor Moore when her wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. They caught it early, stage 1, completely treatable. Professor Moore passed it to Maria in the financial aid office, whose son had been struggling with depression. He finally agreed to see a counselor and was slowly finding his way back to health. The penny continued its journey, creating ripples of good fortune wherever it went. A lost research paper reappeared moments before its deadline. A broken friendship mended over shared memories and forgiveness. A struggling student finally mastered the complex calculations that had been standing between them and their engineering degree. Each time I heard about another penny miracle, I thought of my grandfather and his believing eyes, the way they would crinkle at the corners when he smiled. Maybe luck wasn't about finding money or winning prizes. Maybe luck was something you created by opening your heart to others, like opening a window and letting in the spring breeze. One evening, as spring finally painted the world in soft greens and pinks, the cherry trees releasing their petals to dance on the wind, I came home to find my mother sitting at the kitchen table with Grandma Rose. For the first time in months, both their faces held no worry lines, and their smiles reached their eyes, which sparkled like morning dew on the grass. "Sweetheart," my mother said, patting the chair beside her. The wooden seat was worn smooth from years of family dinners, comfortable as an old friend. "Remember Dr. Sullivan, the head of neurology at the hospital? He came by my station today during rounds. While I was updating him on a patient, we got to talking about you and your nursing studies. It turns out they're expanding their nurse training program, and they're offering full scholarships to promising students who commit to working at the hospital after graduation." She took a deep breath, her eyes shining. "They want to offer you one of the spots. Full tuition, books, everything." My heart soared as I hugged them both, breathing in the familiar scent of hospital antiseptic and hope. "That's incredible. It's like luck finally found us," Grandma Rose finished, laughing softly. "You know what's funny? When Dr. Sullivan was leaving, he dropped a penny When your mother tried to give it back to him, he just smiled and said we should keep it, that it looked like a lucky one. My eyes widened as my mother pulled out a familiar copper penny from her pocket. It gleamed in the evening light, looking exactly as it had that misty morning when I first found it, still carrying that same mysterious warmth. Later that night, as I sat by Grandma Rose's bed, helping her arrange her pillows just the way she liked them, she took my hand in hers. Her skin felt like tissue paper, but her grip was strong. "Your grandfather would be so proud of you, dear one," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "He always said that real luck finds you when you need it most. But you've discovered something even more precious. You've learned that real luck isn't something you find. It's something you create every time you choose love over fear." As I held her hand, watching as she drifted off to sleep, her breath evening out into the gentle rhythm of dreams, I thought about all the paths the penny had traveled. From me to Jonathan, from Jonathan to Professor Moore, from Professor Moore to Maria, and on, until it somehow found its way back to my family when we needed it most. I thought about how luck wasn't really about pennies at all. It was about the courage to reach out to someone drowning in silence, the kindness to share what you have, even when your own pockets feel empty, the wisdom to see that every small act of generosity creates ripples of good fortune that touch countless lives. Years later, long after I had graduated and become a nurse practitioner, working alongside my mother in the same hospital where she had started as a young nurse, people in Cedar Grove would sometimes talk about the mysterious lucky penny that seemed to appear exactly when someone needed it most. They said it carried a special warmth, and that good fortune followed wherever it went. On the day I finally earned my doctorate in nursing practice, I found myself back in Grandpa Patrick's study, now preserved exactly as he had left it. The leather armchair still held the impression of his presence, and if I closed my eyes, I could almost smell the lingering traces of pipe tobacco and peppermint. As I stood there, holding my diploma, a glint of copper caught my eye from the depths of the chair's cushion. With trembling fingers, I reached down and pulled out a penny, warm to the touch as if it had been held in someone's hand just moments before. And there, in the fading light of evening, I could have sworn I heard my grandfather's gentle laugh, felt the brush of his hand against my cheek, and understood at last that the greatest luck of all was the love that connected hearts across time, space, and even the thin veil between this world and the next. That night, as I placed the penny on my grandfather's old desk, I smiled, knowing that its journey wasn't over. It was just waiting for the next person who needed a reminder that magic still existed in the world and that sometimes the most powerful kind of luck is the kind you give away. The lavender-scented moisturizer lingered on my fingertips as I smoothed out Carter's wish paper, its cotton-soft texture catching slightly against my work-roughened hands. The translucent purple paper, decorated with tiny silver stars, had been Carter's special choice at the craft store. "Perfect for magic," he'd declared with the absolute certainty that only a 6-year-old could possess. "This one's extra special, Mama," he whispered, his minty, fresh breath ghosting across my cheek as he carefully dropped the paper into our wish jar. The glass caught the warm glow of his constellation nightlight, creating a dance of tiny prisms across his bedroom walls. The jar had become our sanctuary of dreams in the past year, half full with dozens of carefully folded wishes. The evening air carried the sweet perfume of night-blooming jasmine through his cracked window. Our modest fifth-floor apartment might not have been much, but living next to Mrs. Santos's prized flower garden had blessed us with this small luxury. "They're all special, sweetheart," I murmured, running my fingers through his bath-damp curls that smelled of honey vanilla shampoo, the one he insisted made him smell like cookies. What had started as a way to help him process his feelings after his father left had evolved into something more profound. our private magic that transformed tears into possibilities. I pulled a fresh sheet of star-speckled paper out, cool and smooth against my palm. What should Mama wish for tonight? Carter's deep brown eyes sparkled in the soft light. Something big. Something amazing. The layoff notice burned in my pocket, its crisp edges a reminder of how quickly security could crumble. Company restructuring effective immediately, echoed in my mind like a cruel mantra. My fingers trembled as I held the paper, but I steadied them before Carter noticed. 8 weeks of savings stood between us and uncertainty, with rent due in just 3 weeks. The scratch of my pen against paper felt unnaturally loud as I wrote, a way to keep our home filled with love and laughter. Each letter flowed in my best handwriting, a prayer disguised as a wish, vague enough not to worry Carter, but specific enough to hold my desperate hope. That night, after tucking Carter beneath his rocket ship comforter and ensuring his worn soft teddy bear was securely in his arms, I retreated to my room. The hardwood floor creaked beneath my feet as I settled cross-legged on my bed, cradling the wish jar in my lap. The glass felt cool and weighted, its surface decorated with tiny raised stars that Carter had insisted on adding with glass paint, creating our own private constellation. One by one, I unfolded his wishes, each crisp sound echoing in the quiet room. Moonlight streamed through my gauzy curtains, illuminating his childish handwriting. I wish to be an astronaut and see the whole Earth from space and count all the stars. I wish Mama never has to cry when she thinks I'm sleeping because the walls are too thin. I wish we could stay in our apartment forever, because it's where all our memories are and where I learned to ride my bike in the hallway. I wish for someone to love Mama the way she deserves, someone who makes her laugh like she does when we have pillow fights. Tears welled up and spilled over as I read, one perfect droplet falling into the jar. As it hit the bottom, something extraordinary happened. The tear caught the moonlight and seemed to multiply, creating a cascade of shimmer that filled the jar with a pearl-like luminescence. I blinked hard, convinced exhaustion was playing tricks on my eyes. But as I went to close the jar, a warm breeze swept through the room, despite the closed windows. It carried the scent of jasmine, my namesake flower, mixed with something else, something that reminded me of starlight and possibility. The air wrapped around me like a gentle embrace, carrying the faintest whisper of wind chimes from somewhere distant. The magic unfolded the very next morning. Mrs. Santos caught me by the mailboxes, her silver hair catching the sunlight as she practically danced with excitement about her brother Antonio's new marketing firm downtown. They needed someone with exactly my experience. Then came the message from Thomas Rivera, my old college friend, about an amazing project with great pay and flexible hours. The property manager called about a rent reduction program, and my struggling Toyota suddenly purred to life after Carter patted its hood and whispered, "Be nice to Mama, please. We need you." But the real magic revealed itself when I met Jacob Wyman at Antonio's firm. His hazel eyes held flecks of gold that danced when he smiled, creating the same warmth as Carter's nightlight. During my interview, he didn't just see my portfolio. He saw me and understood the story behind every carefully crafted campaign and community initiative. The job offer came with a salary that made my hands tremble as I signed the contract. But Jacob turned out to be more than my new boss. He was a single father to Luna, a creative 6-year-old who shared Carter's capacity for wonder. Our families intertwined naturally, like stars forming a new constellation. Weekend playdates evolved into family dinners, where the aroma of Jacob's homemade pasta sauce filled my small kitchen, mixing with children's laughter and soft jazz. Luna turned my refrigerator into an art gallery while Carter transformed our living room into a space station. And Jacob filled the spaces we hadn't even realized were empty. One evening, as we sat on my small balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in amber and rose, Jacob's warm hand found mine, his fingers slightly rough from weekend woodworking projects fitting perfectly between my own. The touch sent electricity dancing up my arm and settling somewhere near my heart. Luna asked me something interesting today, he said softly, the dying sunlight catching those gold flecks in his eyes. Oh. My voice barely rose above a whisper. She wanted to know if we could be a real family, all four of us. She said it feels like we're missing puzzle pieces that finally found one another. My heart performed a complicated gymnastic routine. What did you tell her? I told her that some of the best families are the ones we choose for ourselves. His thumb traced patterns on my palm that sent shivers down my spine. And I'd choose this. Choose you and Carter every single time. That night, after Jacob and Luna left, their warmth lingering in our apartment like a favorite song, Carter pulled out the wish jar. The glass caught the light differently now, seeming to hold shadows and starlight in equal measure. "Mama, look," he gasped, his voice filled with wonder. The jar was glowing with a soft, golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. As we watched, breathless, Carter reached in and pulled out one of his old wishes. The paper had transformed into something ethereal, like starlight given form, with a texture somewhere between silk and morning dew. "I wish for someone to love Mama the way she deserves," he read proudly, the words shimmering in the air. "See? The jar is magic, just like I always told you." I gathered him in my arms, breathing in the sweet mixture of cookie-scented shampoo and ever-present jasmine. His small body fitted against mine perfectly, his little heart beating a rhythm that matched my own. "You know what, sweetheart? I think you might be right, but the real magic isn't in the jar. It's in believing that good things are possible, even when they seem impossible." Carter looked up at me with that ancient wisdom that sometimes took my breath away. "That's why we keep wishing, right, Mama? Because anything can happen if you believe?" "That's right, baby." I kissed his forehead, thinking of Jacob's gentle hands and warm laugh, Luna's artistic spirit and generous heart, Mrs. Santos's timely kindness, and all the small miracles that had led us here. And sometimes, the most magical wishes are the ones we didn't even know we needed to make. Later that night, as moonlight painted silver patterns on my wall, I added a new wish to the jar. May our hearts always stay open to magic. The paper seemed to glow as it settled among the others, and I could have sworn I heard the faint sound of wind chimes again. Years have passed, and the wish jar still sits on Carter's bedside table, catching light and storing dreams. Some wishes still wait to unfold, while others have blossomed in ways we never expected. Now when Carter tells me the jar is magic, I don't just smile and nod. I believe him. Because magic isn't about getting exactly what you wish for. It's about being open to the possibility that life has something even better in store. As I write this final wish and watch it settle among the others, I feel the love that surrounds us. Carter's unwavering belief, Luna's creative spirit, Jacob's steady devotion, and the countless kindnesses that carried us through our darkest times. Perhaps that's the greatest magic of all. Not the granting of wishes, but the way hope can transform tears into starlight, strangers into family, and an ordinary glass jar into a vessel of infinite possibilities. The jar's soft glow fills our home now, a constant reminder that sometimes the most powerful magic comes not from supernatural forces, but from the simple act of believing in better days. Each night, as I watch Carter and Luna add their wishes to our collection, their hands intertwined and their eyes bright with shared secrets, I'm reminded that true magic lives in the quiet moments between heartbeats, in the space between wishes, and in the love that turns ordinary glass into a container of dreams. And in those moments, I know with absolute certainty that some wishes don't need a jar to come true. They just need hearts brave enough to believe in their own magic. I remember the day magic crept into my kitchen like a warm summer breeze, though it was the coldest winter Chicago had seen in decades. The wind howled through the gaps in our window frames, and my calloused hands trembled as I sorted through another bundle of forgotten laundry. The sharp scent of lye soap filled my nostrils as I searched the pockets, praying to find enough coins to buy milk for my girls. Our tiny apartment smelled of cabbage and coal smoke, the sense of poverty that no amount of scrubbing could erase. The sheets I was folding belonged to Mrs. Henderson, or so I thought. She hadn't returned for them in months. The cotton was worn thin from years of washing, soft as dove feathers beneath my work-roughened fingers. I shook out the yellowed linens, and something solid thumped against the wooden floor, the sound echoing in our sparse room. A cookbook. Its leather cover was worn smooth as butter, the spine cracked and mended like the hands that now held it. Golden letters flickered in the light filtering through our frosted windows. The secret recipe of hope. The pages rustled as I opened them, releasing the faint scent of vanilla and something else. Something that reminded me of my mother's kitchen in better days. I almost tossed it aside. Hope wouldn't feed my 4 daughters or pay our overdue rent. But something about it called to me, like the memory of my mother's voice singing in her kitchen on Sunday mornings, the aroma of fresh bread mixing with hymns. That night, with barely enough flour to dust a countertop, I followed the simplest recipe in the book. The ingredients list read like poetry. 2 cups of patience, a handful of trust, and enough faith to fill a thimble. Below these fanciful measurements were real ones for a basic loaf of bread. The flour felt different somehow as I measured it, warmer than it should have been in our cold kitchen, almost silken between my fingers. As I kneaded the dough, memories of better days flooded back. Picnics in Lincoln Park with checkered blankets and lemonade so cold it made your teeth ache. My late husband Thomas's laughter rumbling like distant thunder, my girls playing hopscotch on sun-warmed sidewalks. The dough seemed to pulse beneath my fingers, warm and alive, responding to each press and fold like a living thing. The heat from our temperamental oven turned the kitchen windows foggy, and when I pulled out the bread, the tiny loaf had somehow multiplied, filling our kitchen with the aroma of childhood summers and safety. The crust was golden brown, crackling softly as it cooled, sending wisps of steam into the chilly air. "Mama, it smells like heaven," little Rose exclaimed, her hollow cheeks already gaining color from the steam. The other girls gathered around, Emily, my oldest at 12, who'd grown too serious too soon, Margaret, my dreamer with ink-stained fingers, and sweet Catherine, who still hummed herself to sleep every night despite our hardships. That first bite melted on our tongues like morning sunshine, soft and warm and full of impossible things. For the first time in months, my daughter's laughter echoed off the peeling wallpaper, bright and clear as chapel bells. Even Emily's solemn face cracked into a smile as crumbs caught in her dark curls. The next morning, Mr. O'Malley, our landlord, knocked on our door. His heavy footsteps on the stairs usually sent my heart racing, but today was different. When I opened the door, the perpetual scowl on his ruddy face had softened. His cap was in his hands, and the smell of fresh bread still lingered in the hallway. "Mrs. Carroll," he said, shuffling his feet on our worn welcome mat. "I've been thinking. Times are hard for everyone. Maybe we can work something out about the rent. And perhaps," he paused, looking almost shy, "you might be willing to trade some of that wonderful bread as part of the arrangement." That's when I knew. The cookbook wasn't just paper and ink. It was something more, something that whispered of comfort and hope and possibilities. I began experimenting with other recipes. A pot of vegetable stew stretched impossibly to feed not just us, but the Martinez family downstairs who'd lost everything in the crash. Steam rose from the pot like a blessing, carrying the scent of rosemary and possibility throughout the building. When I baked sugar cookies that sparkled like fresh snow, Miss Thompson from the department store caught the scent as she passed by. She followed her nose to our door and offered me a job mending fine dresses, work that paid 3 times what I earned from taking in laundry. The cookies crumbled in her mouth as she spoke, and I watched joy light up her tired eyes. Word spread through the neighborhood about my cooking. Women with hollow eyes and empty pantries began appearing at my door, drawn by the perpetual warmth that now radiated from our apartment. I never turned them away. Each recipe required more than just ingredients. They demanded love, hope, and unwavering faith. If my heart wavered, if doubt crept in like winter frost, the magic faded like morning mist. The cookbook taught me its secrets slowly. A dash of cinnamon in the apple pie brought luck. You could smell it in the spicy sweet aroma that filled the kitchen. Rosemary in the bread prompted forgotten memories. One bite, and people would close their eyes, smiling at thoughts of happier days. Honey and tea healed more than sore throats. It mended broken spirits, its golden warmth spreading through the body like liquid sunlight. My girls flourished under the cookbook's gentle magic. Margaret, my second eldest, discovered she could make flowers bloom in window boxes even in December after eating my gardener's biscuits. The scent of lilacs and roses drifted down the street in midwinter, drawing amazed crowds. Catherine, always so quiet, found her voice after sipping mint hot chocolate, her words flowing smooth and sweet as the drink itself. And Tiny Rose started dancing again, her feet as light as spun sugar, moving to music only she could hear. Then came the day the man in the charcoal suit appeared. His shoes were polished to mirrors, his hat tipped at a rakish angle, but his eyes were empty as dried wells. The scent of cold metal and dried leaves followed him up our stairs. "Mrs. Carroll," his voice oozed like cold molasses, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." He pulled out a wallet fat with bills, the leather creaking as he opened it. "Name your price." I looked at the cookbook, its pages now stained with butter and love, bookmarked with my daughter's drawings and pressed flowers from our tiny garden. In its margins I'd written my own notes. Add extra vanilla to lift spirits. Stir counterclockwise for good fortune. Always sing while kneading bread. The book warmed beneath my touch, as if seeking protection. "It's not for sale," I told him, my voice stronger than I felt. His smile never reached his eyes. "Everything has a price, Mrs. Carroll. Everything." "Not hope," I replied. "Not love." He left the scent of bitter almonds and disappointment in his wake. That night, our dreams were troubled, but I baked peace back into our home with lavender shortbread and chamomile tea. As the years passed, I noticed I needed the cookbook less and less. The magic had seeped into my hands, my heart, my very being. My little laundry service grew into a successful bakery, where every treat came with a side of comfort and courage. The scent of hope and fresh possibilities drifted down the street each morning as I opened the doors. My daughters grew strong and kind, each carrying a bit of magic in their souls. Emily became a teacher, feeding young minds with the same patience I'd learned from the cookbook. Margaret opened a flower shop that bloomed all year round, filling the neighborhood with impossible colors and fragrances. Catherine's voice carried hope through the radio waves, and Rose danced on stages across the country, leaving trails of joy in her wake. When they ask me about the secret of my success, I tell them what the cookbook taught me, that magic isn't in the ingredients or the instructions. It's in the love we stir into every pot, the hope we knead into every loaf, the faith we sprinkle over every life we touch. The cookbook still sits in my kitchen drawer, its magic waiting for the next person who needs it. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear it humming lullabies, reminding me that even in the darkest times, hope rises like bread in a warm oven, and love multiplies when you share it. My daughters have children of their own now, and when they visit, we bake together. Their children ask for the special cookies that make wishes come true, or the soup that chases away storms. I smile and tell them the real magic ingredient, love that's stronger than any depression, hope that rises higher than any bread, and faith that's sweeter than any dream. And sometimes, when the kitchen is quiet and the moon hangs like a silver dollar in the sky, I open the cookbook and whisper, "Thank you." The pages ruffle in response, and I smell vanilla and possibility, knowing that magic isn't something you find, it's something you create, one recipe at a time.